So, of course, starting out with the Hoopla, I want to talk about, of course, all the inspiration that is available, because I did read a lot in the comments that, you know, I can't wait for inspiration, I can't wait for makes, and there's none of that in this one. There are no makes. The makers have worked all year to already provide inspiration for the season. And so that's what this little reminder is, that in the month of August, believe it or not, we shared over 200 makes and over 11 hours of live content to inspire you on the new Sizzix release and what to do with Halloween dies and the release from the vault, new Stampers Anonymous, what to do with all of these great stamps and give you creative ideas, ideology, all the great new Halloween ideology, and even fabric, the Eclectic Elements Laboratory. So if you are looking for makes and inspiration, I encourage you to go to timholtz.com. Mario put up the links, and you can see a post for each of these releases. All of the makes are there as well, so you can kind of look at the thumbnails to get inspiration there. There's also the videos embedded there, or you can go to my YouTube channel, and also you can click on those links to the makers, because I know many of the makers are sharing tutorials that maybe they did the make in August but didn't have time to do tutorials. And I know this month a lot of makers are sharing tutorials. Not everyone, they're not required to do that, but just keep that in mind. So I always want to remind you, because people go, oh, I'm looking for inspiration. Over 200 makes, there is inspiration on how to use this stuff, especially if you've already purchased it and you didn't know what to do with it. But now that'll give you some inspiration. So whether it's going to be stamps or fabric or dies, and my gosh, even the Halloween vault dies, they've been selling really, really fast. And then, of course, ideology. I did fill up the muffin tin again with Halloween because, well, and I'm going to get more into, I think, how I sort my creative stuff for Halloween play. So I'm going to hand this off to Mario. Let me get this, because I want to start with a demo. I got to get my hands inky right away. So yes, shout out to the makers for sure for all of the inspiration that they have provided for the season. So let me get this. There we go. I think that's good. I feel pretty good. Because I think when it comes to creative play, my wheelhouse, of course, well, is inks and play, and we're going to do some spritz, and we're going to do all sorts of fun things to create, because I think starting with some backgrounds, that's a great way to kind of warm things up, right? Whether you like to do embossing or die cutting or stamping or just ink for the sake of inking. And I wanted to not only play a little bit with the spritz, but you know, the people at Ranger, they are so amazing with what they do and how they like to kind of work with me. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we start out the Hoopla not only with just some creative play, and I wanted to do distress spritz, but what if we just doubled the fun? So we're launching 12 new colors of distress spritz today.
Come on.
Come on. We are launching 12 new colors of spritz. These are available worldwide. Ranger has been shipping for the last week to retailers. So thank you, retailers, for keeping it a secret, keeping it quiet. These should be going on retailer sites in about, I'll say, 6 minutes. At quarter past is when the retailers should be launching to sell. So it should show up on the websites then to see these new colors. And I thought I would take this time to go through the new colors of the spritz. And we are going to start a demo with spritz. It wasn't just a lot of blah, blah. We are going to work with the spritz and show you what you can do with them. If you're looking for the basics on how to work with distress spritz, I definitely encourage you to see the launch video that we did. Mario can put a link up in the chat where you can see the basics. But here are the 12 new colors that we're adding to the distress spritz collection. We have Kitsch Flamingo, Saltwater Taffy, Fired Brick, Rusty Hinge, oh my gosh, Antique Linen, creamy dreamy right there. We have Crushed Olive, Mowed Lawn, Cracked Pistachio, Patina, so yum, Tumbled Glass, Prize Ribbon, Seedless Preserves, and Vintage Photo. And so you can see in the swatches, and again, spritz is really designed to work with distress stuff, and that's what we're going to do when it comes to working with it. We are going to use it with other things. These are just the swatches to show you what the spritz look like just on white paper, but I think they always show up better over a color. Now the tin. I did talk about the tin when we launched these, and this was in June, and we said early fall. The tin is going to be shipping later this month, so that would be fall. So definitely, if you have a favorite retailer, get on a notification list or anything like that, because the tins will be arriving this month. I cannot wait. So I'll talk about the swatches, then we'll get into like storage and all that other stuff. So starting with Kitsch Flamingo, a really nice, bright, beautiful pink. I know that the camera just like, it loves to just blast out with the spritz. Saltwater Taffy is a beautiful, see, it's all showing up kind of grayish. It's just so shiny. My word, maybe down here is a little bit better. But Saltwater Taffy, it is that kind of peachy, pinky, corally. Fired Brick is definitely going to be great for Christmas because it has a wonderful deep red tone, very different than Barn Door that we already have in the Spritz collection. Rusty Hinge, yum, very different as well. And I have the other swatches. I mean, it's kind of hard to do some comparisons, believe it or not, when it comes to Spritz because they should be used with other inks. But you can see from the Pearl, maybe you can, maybe you can't. This was Spice Marmalade, definitely more of a brighter orange, and Rusty Hinge is more of that, well, rusty orange. They completely coordinate and match with the Distress palette. Antique Linen, when I said creamy dreamy, it is a beautiful beige neutral pearl. It is so pretty. And I did put it kind of in the yellow because I tried to do another rainbow release, but very different than Fossilized Amber. There you go. See, it's hard when the light hits it. But Fossilized Amber was definitely a dark, deep yellow, and I think that, you know, Antique Linen is great. Crushed Olive. Crushed Olive definitely has some deeper undertones, but that nice green, different than Citron that we had that had a lot of yellow in it. Mowed Lawn, I would say a very, gosh, even down here, a very true green. Maybe. You'll see it. Yeah, I don't need to stress about you guys seeing it on camera or not. You'll see when we do the ink. Cracked Pistachio, probably one of my favorite of the new Spritz, just simply because I do love this color of pistachio. It offers a great patina accent, and I've used it a lot because I love working with this over browns and blues and purples, but it's such a beautiful and minty color too, so I think it's going to be great with Christmas. Tumble Glass. Now, Tumble Glass is really interesting because, of course, when we do a color of pearl, it is important that it actually maintains the color of the ink. So this has some deeper undertone to really provide that really light, pale turquoise color of Tumble Glass. Pretty, very different than like when we had Uncharted Mariner. Completely different. Prize Ribbon, I mean, this is super blue. So I would say, like, is this Snowflake blue? Not really. Tumble Glass is. But Prize Ribbon, I just really wanted a blue in there, and this has such a great undertone value, but you'll see it's really vibrant. Purple lovers, you are going to love a completely different purple. Let's bring this. Okay. So we had Wilted Violet. You can see Wilted Violet is violet, and you can see Seedless Preserves is that reddish purple. These are magic together. Spritzing both together, really good when you have Seedless Preserves and Wilted. And then, of course, another brown, Vintage Photo. So Vintage Photo is definitely a warmer brown than when we did Walnut Stain. So if you love the brown Spritz, you're going to love both of these together. I will also tell you that the makers later today will be posting on their social some different inspiration with Spritz. A lot of them will do swatches. Some might even do makes. So throughout the day, even following the Hoopla, not only do you have the inspiration that we're going to do throughout the Hoopla, but you'll be able to see from posts on social different things that makers have done with the Distress Spritz, including, of course, swatches. And you'll get a much better, I think, look and feel for it. I'll, of course, be posting about Spritz later today when I'm done with the Hoopla. But right now, well, I'm a little tied up. So, very excited. So, shout out to everyone at Ranger, to Alan, Kathy, Meg, the whole art department, production for launching these and getting these for the making season. So, I love the fact that we now have, well, 24 colors. There we are, of Distress Spritz. So we'll talk about the tin because I think it's really important to understand if you are planning on purchasing the tin and how you store them. The thing about any liquid, in my opinion, I'll preface this with it being my opinion exclusively, is that if it is a liquid, I like to store the liquid standing up. I just do. I don't think it's just wise over time to always store a liquid on the side because I don't want it to leak. Even though it's not supposed to leak, anything could happen, especially depending on where you live. We live in a high altitude area. So for the tin, even though the tin is designed this way, the tin was more designed, I'm going to say, for use versus storage, which I know it sounds weird, but a lot of my tins I design more for my personal use versus a storage, but it provides both in my opinion. So the tin itself, when I am storing these, I store my tins this way. They don't lock. I mean, if you were worrying about it, it doesn't have a latch or anything. So but it does have like a little bump that it kind of clicks closed. If you're worrying about these popping open, maybe put a rubber band around it or something like that. But I just store mine like this, and it sits on a shelf. It kind of sits in between a little ledge because I like to store them upright. Maybe you have a storage option where you don't need to store them in the tin, and you're like, well, then I don't really need a tin. My advice is still have at least one tin. Why? Because when you go to use it and let's say you're choosing colors and you're like, okay, I'm going to work with some Spritz today. I like the fact that I can lay them down, because laying the Spritz down is going to allow the mica, the pearl, to actually sit along the side of the bottle instead of at the bottom. And I cover this in the intro video of Spritz, and I think this applies to any kind of shake. Look, you can see all that. Look at all that pearl. If you store them upright and you don't lay them down before you use them, you just have to mix them longer. Okay, you have to shake them, because when you shake these up, there is a mixing ball. There's a little ball in there, and that little mixing ball does like to get stuck in the sludge, even the sludge on the side. There's that mixing ball. But if you do it this way, it's easier to mix. Like, see how quick all that pearl that was there just kind of got mixed into the liquid? And you want to make sure that there's no pearl at the bottom. If there's a pearl sludge at the bottom, you can risk clogging the Spritz. And let me just tell you, I've read online, my gosh, I've even Googled it. I'm like, certainly there's got to be a trick to unclogging a sprayer. Not just for this, okay? Don't think that it's all related to Ranger product. Any kind of sprayer. There's so many different kind of pump sprayers that just clog. Really, there's no great solution. People say, oh, soak it in hot water, try rubbing alcohol, use a pin. You can try all of those things. Personally, I just think having replacement sprayers on hand is a good idea. You can buy them in a 2-pack, but also, and I hope I don't misspeak this time, and I apologize in advance if I do, but there are replacement sprayers for the Spritz in a 2-pack, but I did ask Ranger if they would consider offering a bulk pack. I don't know if it's 10 sprayers, whatever, because, you know, sometimes 2's not enough. The Spritz sprayer is different than the other sprayers. There are also replacement sprayers for your distress spray stains, oxides, and that's just called replacement sprayers. The Spritz ones specifically say Spritz because the tube is a different length for this particular bottle. Do both of these fit on the same? Yes, both of these sprayers will fit. It's just the tube length. So, I mean, if you're in a pinch and you only have these, it'll work on your Spritz. But that's just something that I suggest when it comes. But why I like the tin is when I go to use it, I get to lay it down. They're easy to pick up, shake, use it, and throw back down without rolling off the table. So that's really kind of my jam. I'll be honest, I also love the fact that this tin is this size, and I'm going to use mine for a lot of ideology stuff. I've been looking, I keep all my ideology in little envelope pouches. If you've seen the studio tour, but when it comes to actually working with it, I'm excited to have a very shallow tin that I can dump my ephemera in and sort through it, and I'll have a tin for that. So I think that that's going to be really good. Oh, Ranger said they have a 10-pack available. There you go. Well, thanks, Alan, for adding those. Just because I said, look, I don't go through a lot of them, but two at a time is kind of crazy, and I think the 10-pack is way more cost effective if you're one of those people that just want to have some backup sprays. Okay, let's get into Spritz and ink, and let's have a good time. I can't wait to show off the new colors. All right, I'll put this over here. I've got sprays over here, sprays over here. Here we go. So the cool thing about understanding the Spritz, and that's where I'm going to start, is specifically talking about Spritz and how you can kind of work with it, is just knowing that when you utilize this, it's just going to add a pearlescent shine that coordinates with a color. It's very different than mica stain, and again, if you want to know the basics, I would suggest watching the basics, because I'm going to go right to the beyond. Okay. Hey Mario, can you do me a favor? Sure. In the top locker on the right in the back, there's just a little craft sheet, because this is the mat. There you go. It's on that transparency. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Sure. I just want to have a little sheet on hand. You know, I'm used to working with the media mat, but this is just the replacement craft mat. It's got that silicone backing. This is sold for the media mat, but if you have the studio mat, the white one, it doesn't come with one of these. And if you do inks, I like to have both. I like to work on glass and I like to work on this. So thanks. See, and I thought I had everything ready. It never fails, but at least it happened in like the first 20 minutes. Okay. So understanding how spritz can play a role is the goal of this particular intro. So I'm just going to take a couple of inks. Now you can work with Oxide and spritz, but you can also work with ink. And I think I'm going to start just with ink just to give you, I'll do a couple of orange. Well, I'll do a few. I did put fall colors. This is another thing, and I talk about this a lot of times. Remember when I just said about the tins? I don't store my ink pads in tins. I don't. I have a spinner. If you've seen the studio tour, I like to have all my ink stacked. But when I go to make, and this is even when I'm making or prepping for the Hoopla or Christmas, I like to take a tin and I like to fill it with colors that I'm going to want to use for that season. In this case, this has got orange, yellows, greens, purples, in some ink and oxide. What this does, again, for me, is just that it allows me to kind of curate a palette to work with for the season. Instead of sifting through all 72 colors of my inks looking for colors, I'm like, okay, these are the fall colors. It doesn't mean that there might be one that I want to go get, like, oh, I really want Twisted Citron or whatever, but that's how I use my tins. I know people store all their stuff in tins, and that's great. If this system works for you, perfect. But see, same thing. Like another tin that I love, this is one of my favorites. This is a multi-storage tin. So this is a tin that fits paints, mica stain, as well as it has another insert that you can swap out, and it stores all of your distressed re-inkers, so those glass bottles. I just like, again, that I can put paints and mica stain in the same tin, see, like stadium seating. And again, you'll see just fall colors. Orange, this is I got a new paint, I haven't swatched it yet. But it just allows me to, again, curate a palette. I do that. And then for my sprays, so these are, I'll say, the regulation sprays. I've got spray stains, and then I've got some oxide sprays in the back. Again, it just helps me then saying, oh gosh, I've got all this stuff to go through. So it's completely up to you how you want to store it. I even like to store my paste. So I'll take a distressed tin, I'll pop out the insert, and I'll just gather whatever pastes or mediums that I might want to use. And I love how it fits. So I've got my grit paste, my glow, and my crypt. I've got black, white, some sparkle, little crackle, and then mica and rock candy, because, well, it's glitter season, people. So that's how I use the tins. That's the realistic way. I know, I should say, like, yes, I store all of my inks in this tin. Nah, I don't. Why did I just sound like Dracula? Okay, here we go. I'll start with just taking some ink. If you don't have ink pads and you want to do this with your sprays, you can do this just the same. That's fine. But I am just pressing this down on the craft sheet. It is important that if you're going to do this kind of smushing technique, a craft sheet's going to be a lot better. I have to line this up. My gosh. Anyone else? Like, seriously, my OCD just can't even handle that. There you go, it's lined up. If you don't work on a craft sheet for ink, a lot of times the color will just kind of pool and puddle up, and I don't really like that. Okay, I want it to maintain its little droplets. So typically with this, we would take our inks, put it on there, spray it with some water to create some droplets. There we are. And we would do a print. In this case, I'm going to add some spritz. So let's take a little bit of Rusty Hinge. Now, you can shake this up. Typically, when it comes to shaking, they say, like, shake like a bell, because high altitude where we live, if I shake like this, a lot of times it will, like, leak through the neck of the bottle. If that happens, and that happens to you quite frequently, then just take, maybe you have a cloth that you work with or a paper towel. Remove the clear top, cover it, and then just shake it this way. This way, if there's any leaks, it doesn't go in the cap. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you how clean you want to be. I did talk about this. I'll talk about this again because, well, that's just funny. I'll talk about this little, it's not an infomercial for it, but I think it's funny, and I do love the fact that, well, Ranger listens. So look at how nice this one. I had a black one the last time I shared this. Now I have this new, like, sports car, but I shared this. This is a nail polish shaker. It can shake any kind of bottle. You just strap it on there. I got mine on Amazon. I think I paid like 25 bucks. See, you turn it on. It's got little suction cups on the bottom, and it'll shake the bottle. So if you have like carpal tunnel or trouble shaking, but Ranger, afterwards, Alan's like, oh, I think Ranger needs to sell those. I'm like, yeah, but you need to beat Amazon's price. So I think Ranger got these in, and I think I think it's cheaper than even Amazon, and theirs is like that shiny silver. But if you have trouble shaking, I do recommend getting a little shaker if you need it. All right. I do like that. When he sent me that silver one, I'm like, this is like a shiny sports car, Mario.
Anything shaking,
I'm plugging in. I'm plugging in a heat tool. I told all about the story. No, I got it. Thanks. I told all about the story of why I had one. All right, so I'm going to shake this up, and all I do whenever I shake up any kind of sprayer is look at the bottom and see if there's any sludge. Okay, because really it just takes one time that the sludge goes up, and that's it. Okay, I'm going to spritz the ink. I've already sprayed a little bit of water to create droplets, but I'm going to spritz this. That's a little bit of Rusty Hinge. Can you mix the colors? Yes. When I'm done spraying, there's always a little drop. See in that little sprayer? I'm in the habit of just wiping this off with a cloth or a baby wipe because, again, I don't like leaving any pigment in the schnozzle. You do you. Do whatever's going to work. Now, as far as paper, you can work on watercolor cardstock. You can work on craft. You can work on black. You can work on whatever. All papers are going to work different. Some are going to absorb color quickly. Some are going to give you a little bit of play. That's why I do cardstocks with Ranger. Can you use other ones? Use what you have. But if you're not getting the results you want, first thing I would suggest is try different papers. Try the papers that work. So this is, I think, is like maybe 118. I'm not quite sure the number of watercolor. Heavy stock is 130, but it makes a difference. On the watercolor, you can use the smooth or the textured. I'm just going to play on the smooth side to start. Now, I can go right into this ink as is, or just take my fingers and just break that up. If I wipe off my fingers, I have a cloth hanging right there. This is just going to give me a little bit more interesting play. So let's just go in and just do a dip. I just want to show you the colors. So I'm going to kind of move this around. I'm going to dry it. Anytime you're going to work with ink, it's really, really important that you dry your layers if you want your colors to show up visibly. So you can see I did 3 different colors of ink pads, 1 color of spritz. Could I have done both? Yes. But I just want to kind of create a little mix. There's some crackling over here. Beautiful. All right. It's not totally crispy dry, but it's kind of dry. And this is our first layer. So you can not only see the ink, but you can see where that spritz, see where it hits? It almost like flashes out the camera really bright. Now I'm just going to go in, do another layer. Ooh, nice. Okay. Could I do this over the whole background? Yes. But for the sake of the hoopla, I just want to show ideas. That's what it's about. Maybe spray a little bit of water just because I want a little bit more play in there. Just water. You don't have to. Just going to be, again, a little bit of a player. I agree. It was really nice that, you know, I love it when retailers watch this. I love it when the brand partners watch this and they're like, hey, if you want to use that, that actually makes sense, you know, like on the shaker. I think that's really nice. All right. Just going to dry this. Now, I'm drying with a heat tool. I talk about this. I've talked about this, well, pretty much for 20 years. This is completely different than an embossing gun when it comes to ink, in my opinion, because I can be about an inch away. I also often hold the paper off the surface. If you just allow air to pass through the paper, it's not only going to keep your paper straighter, it's got a little bit of a bend, but paper doesn't have a memory, but it will also dry it in half the time. If you are in a habit of always drying it like this flat, and you're like, it's taking forever, it's because the moisture that you're trying to dry through the paper has nowhere to go. So often your paper will start to curl up like this, like a banana, because the heat's trying to escape. But just holding it up, just a little bit, letting that, I mean, you don't have to hold it in the air. It doesn't have to go into orbit. Just allow the heat to pass through it. It just makes it for an easy dry time. So take a look at that background. Can you see where the spritz just attaches itself to the ink? And you might be thinking, all right, well, okay, Captain Obvious, thank you for showing us exactly what mica stain does. Yes. Could you do this with the seasonal mica stains? You could, because it is ink and mica at the same time. But what if we take this idea and we switch it up? Because what we know about the seasonal mica stains is that it is a coordinating color, like orange has orange pearl, and green has green pearl, and purple has purple pearl. But what if we wanted to take some Halloween colors, and it doesn't have to be Halloween, but after all, this is the Halloween Hoopla, so you can bet that the color palettes are going to be, well, Halloween. But you could do this for winter, you could do this for every day, whatever you want. I'm going to do the same colors of ink, not to cheat. And now I will take a completely different color. So first let me add a little bit of water, just to create droplets. You can see Distress is reactive with water. It's going to wake up when you do that. And I'm going to take some purples. In fact, I think I'm going to do 2 because I showed you how cool both of these purples are. I'm just going to shakety shake. There you are. Check the bottoms. Look at that. See, they mix so fast when they're laying down. Okay. So let's add a little bit of wilted violet. Again, I've wiped it off before I throw it back in the tin. Shakety shake. Little seedless. Wipe it off. See, schnozzle's clean. Throwing it back in. Okay. Orange and purple. Well, what is that going to give us? Well, probably brown. I'm going to still do the mix. But let's show you what we're going to do. We're going to go in and just do, again, a layer. And let's start drying it. What's really interesting about Spritz and remembering what Distress Spritz does, what it's all about, is that it is a coordinating mica. So it's a blend of mica. Thank you, Brian, for being such a rock star on that. That coordinates with the Distress color, but it has no ink in there at all. That's what makes it different than the mica stain. No ink. Now, not only do I have orange and all the different shades of orange, that's why I wanted to do it. I still have, you know, a little bit of carved pumpkin, and you can see some of the red, that crackling campfire. You can even see some rusty hinge. But now when the light hits it, it's purple. What? So for those people that are always looking for those two-tone surprises, you know, where it's like, oh, it's green ink with a blue pearl, you can do that. You just take your Distress ink and you can do the same thing with Oxide, just use a different color of Spritz. So you would think, oh wait, if I add that purple Spritz to the orange, it's going to make everything brown. No, it won't. Even though I mixed it with my fingers. It's because the pearl maintains its color integrity. And that's what makes it really fun. So you can take blue ink with a red pearl if you want. You want to do Christmas, do green and red. It's not going to make brown. Because the mica is a pigment that will maintain its color, and the ink just allows it to layer. So if you've been wondering, like, what is the big hype for Spritz? Like, why do you need another product? Because looking at, say, a card or a background, you're like, oh, that's a beautiful blend. Look at all those wonderful orange tones. And then when the light hits it, you're like, what? How is that purple? But when I see it, it's clearly orange. Wait, it's purple. That's the beauty. That's why we need all those different types of products to kind of mix things up. So I'm going to go in, just add a little bit of water to this because I want to wet this down a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. Water is always going to react your Distress. Also notice when I'm doing a print, I'm not dragging, I'm not moving. I'm always just kind of tapping, even if I move the paper around, because I want just to see as this color starts to lose its intensity on the mat, meaning we've used up all the ink. I want you to see really what the Spritz does, because it will start getting into, I will say, that mucky stage. So I don't want you to think like, oh, it's foolproof. It's never going to be mucky. If you keep mixing it and if you keep adding water to it, you will eventually make those two colors combine. But I want you to see when it dries that you will always see those colors, the campfire, the rusty hinge, that little bit of marmalade, and yet that purple is going to float over the top because those are the colors of Spritz that we use. And Spritz, again, if you go back to the original video that I did with Spritz, these colors will blend. The Spritz, even though they're pigment, if you use 2 of them together or 3 together, or you spray them when they're wet, you can get a beautiful blend. So that's another nice thing about expanding the palette, that maybe you're like, oh, you know what? This is a little too purpley. You know, I want to tone this down. Well, you can add Seedless Preserves, or maybe you could even add like a little weathered wood to kind of blue it up. So you can do that when these are wet. That's our background. Let's do another one. That's a lot of fun. I'm just going to clean this off. Just wiping that down. Let's create some other backgrounds. I do love this. Ooh, so good. All right, I'm going to take some other colors. Doing all right? All right. I'm going to try to stay organized, guys. So I've got my, yes, I put them back. Put them back, pick them out. Let's do some green. Let's do a little bit of blue. Ooh, what do we got? Oh, some forest moss. That one means business in the ink world. And I'm going to do a little bit of, do a little spray, because after all, why not? And for this, I'll do some cracked pistachio oxide, and I'm going to do some cracked pistachio, because you can take all of your mediums. It could be paint, ink, sprays, pencils, and play around with Spritz. So I'm just going to smash this down. So when I'm getting ink out of the pad, I'm not just touching it. See, that's all it's going to do. I'm actually pressing. You can see my fingertip change color and see the ink that comes out. It is important to remember that ink is suspended. So if you're just trying to like drag it across something, you're never going to get color out. You have to just give it a push. Look at all that ink that comes out. It's like a kitchen sponge. I say that just so you understand the best way for an ink pad. That's why storage, storing an ink pad flat or sideways, it doesn't matter, except if you're in a different type of climate. You might be in a high humid environment that you find that when you store your ink pads like this or even upside down, they start to leak. If they do, don't do that. Don't store them that way, because clearly your climate doesn't allow that ink to be any way but flat. But for me, I can absolutely go for it. Can you use re-inkers? I saw that question. Absolutely. Just keep in mind that re-inkers are concentrated. So if you use re-inkers, like a couple drops will go a long way. If you do a lot, that ink is just going to be really dark, but you'd still see the spritz. So next I'm going to take some Oxide spray, shakety shake. There you go. Perfect. Little of that. Question, will this technique work with oxides? Doing it right now. Will microglaze bring out the spritz even more? No, microglaze really seals distress ink and oxide. It doesn't accent a finish other than like if you're on glossy paper. In fact, I find that when you use microglaze over a pigment, something in the microglaze actually starts to remove pigment. Like you can't use microglaze over distressed crayons because it eats the pigment, and the same holds true with spritz. If you try to put it over spritz or mica stain, a lot of that mica will start fluming off, and that has to do with the microglaze. So I wouldn't really use it for that. Okay, so I've got a little oxide spray in my ink. I added some water. I'm just going to do that quick mix, and I'm going to do a layer first, and then I'll introduce spritz, just so you can see that there's just different ways that we can apply this. It doesn't always have to be a pot of soup. Let's see, for this one, I'll still go white. I was going to go craft, but I want to just do a little watercolor just so I have some background. So this one I'm doing a lot of little pressing. Look at those greens. Okay, so this is ink and oxide. Now that little bit of cracked pistachio made this really nice and milky, completely different than just using, dye ink, which is intense. But because I used inks, I'm still getting the intensity of the undertones, meaning I still have forest moss, which is that dark, dark green. I still have a little bit of crushed olive. That's going to be like that yellow that you see. And then this kind of bluish undertone, well, that was weathered wood. So those are the colors that I use. And you can see that even with cracked pistachio, it still kept all of these tones. And that's another thing to keep in mind. Even though you want a greeny background, if you do all greens, you do the green machine, that's fine. But if you ever want to create like a shadow or depth, colors like weathered wood, ice spruce, lost shadow, hickory smoke, those add like this, almost this shadow haze to the background. I don't know if that makes sense, but keep that in mind. Because if it's all greens, which would be fine, it would look great. But I think just that introduction of color, that's what's giving us like this shadow that you see in there, which I find very cool. Okay, let's do some spritz. Now, overall, spritz can just go right over the top. That, after all, that's really what it was for. It was designed to spritz over a background. So let's do that on this one. And we'll continue to go into this color as well. So I'm just going to mix. All good. Cracked pistachio is a very interesting spritz. So for spritz, for me, it's short burst from a distance. It's not flooding it, because you will get a big bullseye. That's why it's really called spritz. Less is more. You can always go back and add to it, but if you oversaturate a paper with spritz or any kind of pigment, you do risk the fact that putting more product on a surface than it will take. And then that will cause some fluming. So just put some on, dry it, add more. You can always add more. Again, I'm just drying it. Okay, so let's take a look at our background. So one, I love the fact that our background really didn't change. We can see some of those gray spots, but that's really that cracked pistachio. Look at that in there. It just has this really beautiful, it's almost patina-ish, like a minty vibe. But let's keep going with our background. So I want to add some other darker tones. I can see here that this got pretty milky. So I'm just going to create a little landing space, just cleaning that off with a cloth. Because I know there's oxide in play, I don't want to contaminate my inks. If you put inks in oxide, they will contaminate. Okay? The other way won't. Like if you put oxide in ink, it won't, because, well, pigment dominates dye. We don't need to get into that. So I cleared a landing space. I'm just going to put a little bit of forest moss there. That's going to be our dark color. Going to spray that with a little bit of water, break that up. And this one, we're going to take a little bit of peeled paint, and we're also going to take some mowed lawn. Very different green pearls in here. You can even see from the bottom. Peeled paint is that like dirty green, as it should be. Mowed lawn is, well, it's that bright grass green, as it should be. Okay? There you go. And now I'll just add a little spritz. There's some peeled paint. Wiped it off, threw it in there. Spritz, wipe it off, throw it in there. See, that's what I love about the tin. Okay, so now I'm just going to add to this. And we'll just create just a little break. Not much at first. Just take it easy. Layer, layer, layer. So this is going to create like a cool green background. This could be like for cauldrons, bubbling things, all sorts of yummy goodness. I see the age-old question, which is better, oxide or ink? There is no better. There is no better. It's really what you like and what you plan to do. You know, some say oxides are easier for blending because they're creamier. Yes, that is true. Inks are more intense because it's all dye-based. Backgrounds, I think you can do more with ink than you can with oxide, just because of what I'm showing you right now. But ultimately, it's your pick. I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think it's good to have a few little things. I think that would be good. All right. So next, now I'm just gonna start tapping. So all those drips, that's really the intention of this particular surface versus the glass. It's creating these little beads of ink, and that's what allows so much of these little speckles on there. Now while I'm drying this, I'm going to go in with some water, and I'm just going to slowly squeeze the trigger of the sprayer, and that's what's going to create those splatters. Okay, the Distress sprayer has a great mist. See, if you spray it, it's a mist. But if you slowly squeeze the trigger, you get those great little droplets. See, that's what I'm doing on the background. It's almost like little rain droplets, because it's always going to react, and those rain droplets will, in fact, make a big difference. Now I could blot this off if I wanted some white spaces, but I don't. I just want to go. I would just suggest, really, anybody that's starting out with inks, start with what you like, the colors you like, and the type of mediums you like. And do not let anybody's opinion sway that. If they're like, oh, this is my favorite, that's their favorite. But what's your favorite? So try out a couple of mediums, and this way you can say, oh, you know what, I'm way more comfortable with this, or oh, I see the benefit of this. And that is how I think you can build just a better palette that you're going to actually use. Not that, you know, we have full set syndrome. Look at that. See, the water just kind of broke that up, but now we've got just that wonderful, see that shine in there? We've got a little pistachio that's in there, but now we start introducing these other little hits of green. And what I like about this background is not only are my ink colors different, but when the light hits it, the spritzes as well. So you can see that initial spritz in the background remained. That's the cracked pistachio. But then certain spots, when I dipped into that forest moss, it added that little bit of peeled paint and mowed lawn to it. So, I mean, the camera always likes to blast out the pearl. And really, anyone that's used Spritz that does social media, you know it's like the hardest thing to photograph when you have all that shine. It's impossible, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe that it has to do it. So, all right. So I'm just going to go ahead and just dry this. Now, keep in mind, like I said at the very beginning of this demo, paper matters. So if you find that you're trying to use a product like Spritz or mica stain or anything with pearl, and you find that every time you touch it, that pearl is fluming off, see, there's nothing on my finger, it means typically you're using the wrong paper, because that paper is not going to allow that to permeate the surface. Or maybe you've used just too much. Case in point, let me just grab a little bit of craft, and I'll clean this up, and I'll just show you like what you could potentially have go wrong. Okay, let's clean up this sludge. There we go. All right, so let's see, what do I have in here? I know I've got some Oxide. Ooh, that's ice. Ooh, let's do this. Yeah, let's do a little shaded lilac. That's going to be good. So that's just Oxide. And again, Oxide could be, it could be the pad, or it could be spray. Okay, these are the same product in a sense. This is just a sprayable version of this, but this is not the same ink. And this is not this ink, okay? But this is a sprayable version, so it has a different liquid, a different resin in it that makes it sprayable. This is more concentrated, which makes it blendable and stampable, okay? But as far as their properties, do they oxidize and what their color is, it's the same. This is just going to allow me to stamp and blend and provide a little bit. This will allow me to spray. So different mediums, of course, also do different things. Okay, I'm just gonna add a little bit of water, just a little bit. I don't wanna add too much. And I think on this one, ooh, let's go in with some weathered wood and some tumbled glass. This will be pretty. And I could add some purple to it as well. But I'll just show you really some things that you could have happen potentially. All right, just gonna look at the bottom. See, there's still a little bit of sludge there. Wanna make sure this mixes up. There you go. If you don't hear that mixing ball, it just means that it's stuck in the mud. You gotta get that going. All right, let's take a little bit of tumbled glass. That's nice. And I'm gonna do just a touch of weathered wood. Weathered wood is almost like a silvery blue, which I really love in the Spritz world. Okay, let's go into it. Now, could I just go into it like that? Yes, but I don't. I just always like to break up the party. I think I'm gonna get just a better background. Let's just start drying. Okay. Look at that. Just adding that little creamy layer. Now, we're working on craft this time. This is craft stock. So this is a heavyweight craft paper, very, very porous, but I love the effect that a Spritz and an Oxide does, because Oxide, of course, is going to be that dyeing pigment that's going to give you a little bit of blend. Just drying it, not crispy dry, because I'm not done, so I'm just going to keep going. So that just kind of went off the edge. Let's pick some of that up. Let's just layer that, just to add some color. You'll see what I'm going to do in just a second. All right. Just going to dry it. Now, one of the things to know about using one medium or the other, and that's really, that's what I love about a Hoopla. I can watch the chat and I can kind of demo accordingly. So this is just Oxide and Spritz. Is it pretty? Yes. Do you see the shine? Yes. So to answer the question, does Spritz work with Oxide? Yes. But to me, it has just almost like a flatness to it. It doesn't really have the same punch that I think having ink and Oxide. And the beauty, quite honestly, is that you could go in and add some color. So let's just take a little bit of Villainous Potion. It's just it's a spray stain. Just going to add one shot of that. This is going to be pretty intense stuff. Going to add some water to it. So I'll add a little spritz of wilted. Because I've already used these, doesn't take nearly the time to mix them up. That's going to be the new seedless. Let's also go in, what do I want? That's all I want. Let's mix that up. Now let's introduce some dye into this. So now when I'm hitting it, you can see that I'm not really pressing it down because I don't want to cover up everything. But this is the impact that a distress ink or a stain has, okay? Ink has way more color punch than an oxide. A dye is always going to be more saturated, more vivid in color. And an oxide is going to have that dye, but also pigment. And pigment always seems to soften things up a little bit. So there you go. If you're working on smaller papers and you have sensitive hands, get yourself a little pair of these little grippies. They really do make all the difference in the world. I don't have that issue because I've been using a heat tool forever and I don't think my thumb feels anything anymore. But just keep that in mind. That also works, even if you're embossing. All right. So here we've got the introduction of ink, but we're layering it over the oxide. So I think that's looking really good. I'm going to set this one down. I'm also going to just play in this. So let me spray this. Let's add a little bit more oxide there. That's going to be oxide spray. Then I'm going to add, it's just going to be a casserole now just because I have stuff out and I'm going to add a little bit of prize ribbon, which is what I wanted to do initially. Prize ribbon is really an intense spritz. Like, look at that. It's a beautiful blue though. So I'm going to just let that dry for a second. You can let things air dry or use a heat tool. I tend to use a heat tool just because I'm impatient, but I know a lot of mixed media artists, they just like to do something and set it aside. So that's absolutely fine. For this one, I'm just going to take some watercolor paper and now I'm just going to do a drag. Okay. because all of those colors are going to play nice. So I wouldn't really do a drag if I was, you know, having orange and green and all that other stuff, because that would make mud. But blues and purples, beautiful. And then I'm going to talk about oversaturating with Spritz, because I did see that question about fluming. But typically, if something's rubbing off, it's the surface that's not allowing you to apply that medium to the surface. Not all papers are created equal. I know people think that that's just a big sales pitch, but the proof is really when you make. You're like, it's just not working for me. Chances are it's the paper. The other thing, honestly, is just too much of something. Spritz is designed to be spritzed. It's not designed, you know, we didn't call them soakers, because you don't want to soak your surface. You just want to, well, you just want to spritz. And it is beautiful. Well, I'm going to just fill in that little space right there. There we go. It is beautiful, but I think often when you're working with a medium and you're like, oh, this is so pretty, using too much of it is just, it's too much. Okay. I'm just going to dry this. Now, right now, this is just a beautiful kind of creamy blend. I love that blend of a little bit of Villainous Potion stain, because, you know, Villainous Potion is, I mean, you saw when I sprayed it. This stuff means business. It is a dark purple. But mixing it with a little bit of shaded lilac in an oxide is giving this really wonderful, I don't know, it's got an evil queen vibe to it, doesn't it? Pretty, pretty. But on both, I mean, different mediums do different things. Okay, now if I go in and add water to this, again, I'm going to just add those little splatters. I just want you to see what's going to happen to this particular background. I'm going to let the water sit there for just a second or so. I'll hit it with the heat tool, but not to dry it, just to kind of form the outlines. I'm going to take a paper towel, something porous, go across the top and lift it. And that's going to create just those drips. I like that because I loved the background, so I didn't want to go back into the ink. That's just going to take off anything that the water was grabbing hold of. By doing that heat tool for just a few seconds, it's also just going to outline those drips better. So especially if you want those little jaggedy edges, I like that heat tool for just a few seconds. It kind of like, I don't know, it takes a snapshot of that. Okay. And that's the whole purpose of demoing. I mean, gosh, I could demo inks for hours, and I've probably done the same demo a bazillion times, and I never tire of it. You know why? Because you're always going to get something different. It doesn't matter if you have a stack of paper and use the same colors. Everything's always going to turn out different. So that is why I encourage people to have a creative play day. Sit down with your inks. Become one with the ink. You know, be friendly. Understand what they like, what they don't like. Introduce them to new friends. Be like, hey, you've never met these guys. Let me show you how much you're going to like them. Okay, so here you can see that shine. Why do we have Spritz in there? Because remember, on that first oxide layer, we introduced some Spritz. We also introduced Spritz on the ink layer. So can you see that these two layers have different colors of Spritz? The Spritz attaches itself to whatever ink you put on when you apply it this way. But if we apply it over the top, which we'll do on this one, we can completely transform the whole background. So let's start with a little prize ribbon, because you'll totally see it. I'm just going to work in a section. This is not necessarily what you should do. This is just what I think people tend to do. So they're like, I really like this, so I'm going to get really close and I'm going to spray it. And you know what? You can. You do you. The challenge with that, though, is there's a lot of product on there, and it is beautiful, and some papers will handle it. Others, this is where you run into trouble. Now, anytime you run a pearlized paper through an embossing machine, maybe you're using an embossing folder, you're die cutting something, it doesn't matter how set this was on paper, that force going through a machine will usually come off on your die or folder. Don't freak your freak, just wash it off. Just water and it will come right off. I want to make sure this is totally dry. I see still a little damp there. So that's okay to emboss or die cut, but don't be concerned if you're like, oh no, the pearl is rubbing off on my die or embossing folder. That's just the friction of the machine. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to do it before or after. Okay, so here's our background, but look at that prize ribbon up. Oh my God, that color, ridiculously cool. Okay, clean finger, clean finger, clean finger. If I lick it, will it come off? Yes, because it's water reactive. So don't lick, but it's the paper that allowed that much medium to go. But if I added another layer, 2 or 3 layers, would it flume off? Yes. So it can always handle a good saturated layer because this is watercolor cardstock, okay? But after that, it is what it is. All right, let's just throw in some other colors just because we can. And we can play out with some different colors. All right, now these colors, it's really interesting. I gotta be honest, like and I surprised myself. When I was doing Spritz and I was picking the palette, I couldn't believe how many pinks. I mean, heck, in the first launch, 2. Second, 2. I mean, Saltwater Taffy isn't really a pink, but it kind of is. It's a little brighter than Tattered Rose. But why do I like these? I think it's just because, well, I just like the finish that it gives. It just gives a really beautiful finish to it. And of course, we're going to do something vintage because I want to show you antique linen. We got to create some like bone-looking backgrounds. We've done some orange, we've done green, we've done purple. Now after this, we're going to do some bone-looking backgrounds. But I'm just playing around just so you can see how Spritz can really impact a background. And so having a light color of Spritz is really cool. So I'll start, let's just put a little bit, just going to spray a little bit. So I did a little bit and a lot, meaning it's got a little splatter, but then a concentrated area versus full on. Because understanding how a product works is what's going to make you more comfortable using it and happier at the end. That's what I truly believe. That if you just understand it, you don't have that fear factor and you're like, heck, I'm just gonna play. I'm gonna do just like what that guy did. Just gonna play. Just ink and talk, and you know what? If it helps, talk to yourself. Talk out loud. I do that a lot. The voices in my head know me well. They have different personalities, and most of the time Mario's like, are you saying something to me? I'm like, nope. Having a meeting, party of one. Okay, here's what I love about Spritz. Purple. What do we got? What? Come on. Do you see? That's the magic of this, because it's still going to give you that shine, whether you want blue, whether you want that. Look at that Saltwater Taffy. That's pretty magical. Or we want to mix and match some colors. So let's do a little bit of that, and we'll do a little tumbled glass. Crazy. But I do think that's really, if you're in your craft room and you're struggling through, I'm encouraging you to talk to yourself. But it is the truth that sometimes you need to talk through the process. Like, I don't really know if I'm doing this right. I think that's good. I think I like it. Saying that out loud, even if no one else is in the room, it is still going to allow you to process that thought and get it out of your head. That is, I think, what holds us as creatives back more than anything, is we sit in our head for way too long.
Yeah,
we do.
I vouch for that, because you'll start to say something to me, and I'll just be standing there staring at you, waiting,
Yeah.
and I go, you know, you haven't said anything since you started.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I had a full conversation. I figured it out. I do. And he's like,
okay, I'm at it.
and he's like, okay. So another thing to do with Spritz is, again, I'm keeping my distance, but just kind of let some of those little drips fall, right? A little bit bigger. That to me is a cool effect that it's going to get. It does get a little messy. See, it kind of starts to leak around the schnozzle a little bit because I was kind of hesitant. It's better to commit, but the further you are, I think the better it's going to be. There's some pink. So I added just a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo, and I added a little bit of Prize Ribbon. Again, new, but I could work with the other colors just the same. I'm just putting all these on a background, not, like I said, not because I would, but I want you to see how you can play around with Spritz. Because there's no one way to use anything. It's just whatever you're working with. Okay, so there's our purpley background. But now on the bottom, we've got that saturation of Prize Ribbon, pretty. We've got a little bit of Saltwater Taffy, pretty. And then going up through the whole thing, okay, you see that? We have just a little bit of tumbled glass. So even tumbled glass, because it's a lighter blue, you see how it even goes over the Prize Ribbon? So Spritz can layer on top of Spritz. And then we have that little bit of Kitsch Flamingo, which is a brighter pink than Saltwater Taffy, which is a pale pink. So those are just plays. And you might be thinking like, well, what would I do? Like, I'm a card maker. Okay, first of all, don't sell yourself short. Fabulous background. You can stamp on here. You can stamp a silhouette of a flower. You can tie something on. Like, embrace the space, because I think that's often really cool. The other thing when you have backgrounds, any of these, get out your die cuts, die cut some leaves through this, die cut bones if you're going to do some creepy things for Halloween. You want some green bones or skellies, or just run it through an embossing folder. There's a lot of things. So we'll probably play around with these backgrounds in a bit, but I think it is important to compartmentalize your way of thinking when you do backgrounds. That's just, again, you showed up for the hoopla just to hear a lot of Tim opinions, and these are all my opinions. You might roll your eyes and be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and that's fine. But if you allow yourself just for an afternoon to get out of your head when it comes to backgrounds, you have no judgment. Before you know it, you're going to have just a pile of things, not fully edge to edge. Even this one, it's like, wow, this is so cool. I'm going to crop that. That's going to be a beautiful background. Look at that. It's so great because I don't want this, but you know what? That's now a cool piece. But I don't really like this weird thing in the middle. That's just me. So cutting it, now it becomes a cool piece of background. So all of these things have purpose. It's just if you're in your head from go, you'll always want this to look like a finished piece that you have in your head. So as Mario would say, get over yourself. Because if you get over yourself, you really will have a lot more fun. I can't believe I'm putting stuff back. I did tell myself though. Let's see how long that lasts. I told myself the hoopla is, we're just getting into it. So who knows what's going to happen. Okay. Real quick, I'm not going to show this, but I just want to talk about it, that if you have black cardstock, okay, and you want to really amplify it, you can lightly spritz and have just a beautiful finish, or you can completely soak that paper and have, I mean, that's just black cardstock. It's so pretty how things go through. This is one of my favorite folders. I mean, I've got some embossing folders. I do. I have a stack of them, but I'm like, you know, I have the foliage that we talked about. Like that was a cool one where we did, I think we did this during the Distress Halloween live where we did inks and mica stain and oxide. This folder's been retired. The skulls retired. This one with the acorn retired. So all the folders from Sizzix have been retired, but they're still cool. You still might be able to find them somewhere. This will remain my favorite Halloween one just because I think that the details are crazy. But yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. I'm like, well, I'd like to emboss, but see, I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can take any kind of background and turn it into fall or Halloween vibes. Okay. Let's see. Let's do a little bit of stamping and stenciling. That's what I want to do next with some Spritz. Okay? I'm going to work with a smaller piece. Again, watercolor cardstock. I'm also going to do a tag. This is mixed media heavy stock. So mixed media is kind of like a manila tag, but it isn't. It has a wonderful smooth finish. It's a bit heavy. The tags come in 2 different sizes if you're looking for quick tags. It is different than an office tag. So I always like to say that not because I want you to buy it, just because if you find some cheap office tags, they might work great, but if you're struggling and you're like, what is he using? That's it. But I'm also going to do some watercolor.
That's because you are the mayor of Tag Town.
I do like tags. There's nothing wrong with that. Mayor of Tag Town. Let's do a little crocodile. We're going to do some bone stuff. Oh, we could do a little brick too. Okay. Let's get out some things in play. What do I want to do? I know what I'm going to do. We interrupt this spray for some pasting. We're going to do some pasting real quick, guys. If you don't mind. You've seen some sprays for a while. We'll get back to Spritz momentarily. But if I don't get some paste on anything, it won't dry in time. Luckily, it's still toasty here. So I'm going to let's do some crypt. Let's do some black. Let's do some opaque texture paste. Honestly, we could do so many different ones. Now, I'm going to share something with you. And if for those of you that have been watching the lives for, well, the whole season, I teased, not really, I mentioned that I was trying to come up with a way to make my product last longer. Now, I am not guaranteeing this in any way. I'm telling you what I have experienced. I mean, fix that. What I have experienced, and it works. And ask Mario, like I've tested it and tested it and tested it. Now, when it comes to paste, the whole purpose of any art medium is to use it. So if you buy something and you think it's an everlasting gobstopper that you can put away for 6 months and expect it to be perfect when it comes out, that's just not going to happen. But if you buy stuff and you do use it, and you use it frequently, and you still think in 6 months it should be around, I would agree with that. But stuff that's just stored away, it's just not going to work, especially when you open it. So what I find interesting is when I buy stuff from Ranger, and I like to get it in volume, right? I don't just get one thing at a time, like, oh, I want one and I want a backup. Sometimes it'll sit in the closet for months, sometimes even a year. And I'll go to open maybe a jar that I'm using. I'm like, oh, it's dried up. And I'll go and take out a jar and I'm like, how is it that this jar is still perfect when it's new, but it's still a year old. Does that make sense? Now, I've shared the press and seal trick, but I'm going to be honest. We evolve. I liked press and seal, but then I hate press and seal because when I peel it off, all my medium's on there, I try to scrape it, it turns up into a ball, and I throw it away and get out a fresh piece. And I'm like, I got to come up with another option. Are you ready? The solution is this. It's a rubber band. Now, these are like a broccoli band or an asparagus band that you can find at the grocery store. I didn't want to go and take them off of broccoli and asparagus, so I did a little Google search, and I wanted to find a broccoli rubber band, but I wanted them in black. And I did find these online. I had to buy way more than any person should have to buy them, which I didn't really like that. But I bought them in black. I think I have like 3 pounds of rubber bands. I didn't need that many, but the point was I wanted something to go around the jar. Now, when I first got them, because they are rubber, they're made in the US, because you want something that's rubber, you don't want silicone. It had this weird film that I stretched at first and it got very chalky, and so I rinsed it with water. So if you get these rubber bands, who knows, maybe people will start selling them now. You know, I did tell Heidi at Simon Says about it when she was here for the Stamptember. I'm like, look at this trick. And well, now Ranger's hearing about them, so maybe they'll sell them because nobody really needs a bazillion. But they are on every one of my fluid mediums. Now,
I have a bazillion.
Here's the crazy thing. It goes around this gap. This is what I think is the problem. Even though these go on tight, there's a seal. I mean, Ranger's doing all they could. I found that when I took a new jar, it had a shrink sleeve on it, right? Shrink plastic, which meant the shrink sleeve is, I think, what kept air out of it. So even though I was putting in press and seal, I just didn't like the mess. And it did work. Don't get me wrong. Press and seal worked. But now I can just do my paste. And even if my paste is down this far, which you know would be like, and I've tested this now for, I think it's going over 3 months, and it's been the hottest time in Arizona, and my spinner is in front of a window. It's creamy, dreamy. And I did not add water. I'm not trying to sell rubber bands. I'm just telling you what I found as a solution, because I do think as a creative, if you have a problem, it's not someone else to solve it for you. You know, it's not like, well, the company should sell it with rubber band. No, they shouldn't. The company sold you a jar of paste so you could use it, not to store it. But if you are storing it, as we do, this is just a great tip that I found. So when I'm done, I put the lid on, I take this rubber band, it goes right around, and I make sure that it goes right over that seal, and see how it like indents so you could tell it's really on there? Perfect. So anyway, that's my trick. So when you, oh, of course, because Heidi's smart. Yeah. So this is just something that I do, and it absolutely has worked on every paste and every glue, collage medium, you know it. Size you order rubber band. It wasn't a size. Like, I just remember, just Google like broccoli. If you want to buy a bag, like Google broccoli rubber band, and it's going to have a weird number. Staples doesn't sell it. Office Max, Office Depot, Walmart, Target. I looked everywhere for those. They just don't have this size. But like Mario said, Simon Says had it. And hey, maybe Ranger will have it, because I'll tell Alan where I got this 3-pound bag of rubber bands, which from a rubber band place, which you don't want to pay the shipping. Anyway, I'm just telling you because when you see these come off, I've been taking them off before every other demo, but now I feel good sharing it, because I didn't feel good early on, because I'm like, I think it's just a quirky idea. It's really not going to work. Guys, it works.
And it's
okay.
Just a thought. It's not a guarantee.
No.
It's a Tim Holtz idea.
Which is just what I've said. Yep. Okay. Let's play around with some pastes. We're going to do some, got a bunch of different stencils over here. We got some skull. Let's do some bubbles, just so I have some things for some backgrounds. You guys are good with that? Okay. Perfect. I'll save that for some inking. Ooh, I'll do a little bit of script. Okay. I just grabbed some stencils. I'm just going to paste up a few things. We'll ask Mario to put them outside to dry, and then we'll be able to go.
82, what we bought.
There you go. It's an 82. That helps you. Okay. There we go. Watercolor cardstock. I'm going to do some tags. I'll do some craft. I think that's going to be good. I'll even do some black. I'll do a little bit. I've got all sorts of paper over here. See, it's good to have pre-cut paper. Give yourself options, because you never know what your medium's going to look like on this. All right, there we have it. So I'm going to use a palette knife. And I think the first thing, didn't I do a brick? I did. Okay, I'm going to do a brick. Let's do some sort of cool, funky, grungy background on this. So I'll take a little bit of Crypt. Look at that. See? I swear I didn't add anything to it. And this has been open since since last year. Insane. Oh my gosh. I hope that that idea stands the test of time, more than just months. I hope really it lasts for years, because as makers, I know, you know, I'm certainly not calling anyone out. We have the best intentions when we buy stuff. We're buying it because we want to use it. But, you know, other product takes precedent. The new shiny object gets used. Nothing wrong with that. So there's a little bit of crypt paste through a brick stencil on a background. I'm going to let that dry. I'm just going to set up a little pile.
Okay.
I'm going to do a whole pile. So if you have a tray or something, I'll throw you that. Thanks. Thanks, Mario. Okay, let's do this. Another little bit of crypt, just because I had some. Pick up some of this. So again, a little palette knife. I just like to pick up a little bit of paste on the bottom. You don't need a ton. You can always go back and get more. I'm more of like, I'd rather pick up some paste than put a ton of it on there. Thanks, Mario. All right. Then I'm just gonna, you can clean this off with water. You can wipe it off. My stencils, I've always talked about a little pan of water. I've got that off to the side. I just threw that in the water while it's wet, and then all that stuff will float off. So this is done. You don't have to put these on right away, but it's a habit now. That's all I do, and that's it. Ready to roll. Okay, let's do some different paste. We're going to start with opaque. We're going to have some nice white fluffy. That's a big one. Let's do a bigger background. I just like this one. This one's going to be really, pretty. This is an old school Halloween kind of medallion stencil. So you can see when I put this on, like I'm so particular. No, I like to just use parts and pieces of it. Could you go down through the whole thing? Yes. But I'm spreading it on and I'm skimming it off. Spreading, skimming. So that's really what I've done until I can see the design. Let me pick that up. Can you see? So when you use paste, pretty much once you apply your first layer of paste, it's going to hold your stencil down. You don't need to tape it and do all that stuff, okay? But then when you're done, you just want to like lift it off. There we go. Simple as that. And do a lot of stuff in advance if you can. I always like to, I definitely did some prep, but I didn't do tons of it. But I want to do this. Look at this one. This one looks fun. These little bubbles. It's kind of cellular. This is going to be a good one. And this is just going to allow us to do maybe some inking and some spritzing a little bit later. But I think for this one, I'm going to do some glaze on this. Okay. Ooh, that's cool. So I'm going to throw that in there. I'm going to just scrape this off. I'm going to put this down. Multitask. That's what it's all about. That's what I have on this. Cool. I'm going to take a piece of paper. Let me clean the paste off of the craft sheet. Then I will take some embossing glaze. And I'm just going to use some colors. Now you can use whatever colors you want to use on here. I want this to be I think I'm going to go for like a little reptilian vibe. So I'm going to go with like some greens, some purples, a little bit of blue, and maybe even some brown. I will incorporate some of the new colors. I know there's frayed burlap, tumbled glass. It's a lot of colors. Now, when you do this, some people, see, sometimes that seal, I don't know if I'm supposed to throw that away. Sometimes it sits in the jar. Sometimes it sits on it, but if I see it, I get rid of it. There you go. Just a bunch of colors. There we go. Ooh, see, there was powder in the lid. No worries. Okay, just going to take a little pinch of powder, and I'm going to get right above that, and I'm just going to twist my fingers together and just add some color. I'm wiping off my fingers in between because I don't want to contaminate the powders, and I'm just getting really close. I'm very happy about Shaded Lilac. See, I'm not really much of a huge purple person, but there's certain colors that work really well together, and you need them, especially for, you know, if you're going Halloween or dragon or something crazy cool. This is a little evergreen bough. Evergreen bough is definitely a blue-green. And then we're going to use some tumbled glass. That's going to give me some light blue. And again, I'm just twisting my fingers. See, that releases the powder. So it's just a pinch of powder. It's not a lot. I know sometimes people are like, I don't like that technique. I'm wasting it. What's wasting it more? You using it like this and having fun, or just not using it all? I think use it and have fun. So I think that's enough. I'm just going to put the lids back on the jars. It does help if you give your jar just a little tappity tap. That will also take any powder that's off of the rim of the lid, so like my crushed olive. But my powders, I mean, ask Mario, they're not organized. They're thrown in a bin, okay? So what I love about Distress Embossing Glaze, if you're not familiar with embossing glaze, Distress Embossing Glaze is a translucent embossing powder. So it's just like all the other embossing powders that you would typically use for cards, but this will melt translucent, see-through versus opaque and solid. And that allows you to do a lot of fun things. So like this one, in fact, I'm even take some of that green right there. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now, but what I'm gonna do is hold it over the paper and I'm just gonna take my fingers and do a little tap dance underneath. And that's gonna bounce that powder around. And it's just gonna cover all that stuff. Instead of just dumping it to one angle, you're just gonna bounce it until it all falls off. And this is what we'll have. See those little blends? It's cool. If you did powder and you just tipped it, then you risk one color just kind of dominating the whole background. So once that's done, we're gonna let this dry. We need the paste to dry before we heat emboss it. We will need to heat emboss, okay? But we need to make sure that that's going to be dry first, because if it's not, this paste will bubble up like a marshmallow, and well, that's just not good. So I'm gonna put that there. All right, now this stuff, well, what do you do with it? Well, some people save it in a jar. It's like a party mix. Others don't. I'm gonna actually use it, because you know what? That's pretty cool. So I don't typically use it, but it's a hoopla. Anything goes. So let's take a background. See, to me, this background and this little color blend, doesn't that seem like it just works? I think so. All right. Here's what we're going to do on this one. I'm going to need another piece of paper because I'm going to have to dump some powder. So I've got this background. That's just all of my inks and shine and all that. So first, I don't want the paper. I want the paper. I don't want the paper. I need to clear myself a working space. Let's get these glazes out of the way. Where did I put that? There we go. If you would see how much setup, it's madness. Okay, I'm just going to take some water. Now you can use embossing ink, you can do a stencil, you can do a stamp, you can do anything you want on the background. I'm just going to do some water, and I'm going to, you can spray it out of the sprayer, but I'm just going to spray some in my hand. See, like that much, and then I'm just going to flick it on, just to create some big drips on my background. Then I'll dry this off. And then I'll take my paper, and then I'm going to place my glaze over the background. Just sprinkle it on there. And then we'll move it around. And if I don't have enough, I can always get more. But I should. It's pretty good. I'll apply some more. So I'm just going to pick this up. So you can use all your scraps for a background if your blend allows itself to kind of be used like that. Let's just keep moving it. There we go. There we are. I'll show you. See that? See all those little splatters of water? So yes, you can emboss with water, okay? The difference is, unlike using an ink, embossing ink, Versamark, paste even, you don't have the same drying time, okay? Like this, once the water dries, the powder's gone because it doesn't have anything, it's just water. So if you're going to emboss with water, then you need to emboss it right away, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to plug in my heat tool, my embossing gun. Heat tool, embossing gun, to me, totally different animals. The heat tool is what I was using for ink, embossing gun, embossing powder. Heat it up. I want to make sure this is hot. Okay. And then we're going to emboss. Now the glaze is going to melt translucent, so it's still going to show my background. But it's going to have that tint, so I think it's going to go really, really nice with it, and it's going to give it some great shine. Embossing water takes longer than embossing with ink because you're drying that drip of water, but you're also melting the powder at the same time. It's very cool. Could you have just misted it? Yes. Could you have misted water through a stencil? Yes. It's just water. But just know that if you're going to do this technique, you need to heat emboss it right away. You know, or within a couple minutes. Like, you can't let the water soak into the paper and dry. Otherwise, as soon as you turn on your heat tool, the powder just flies away because it's got nothing to stick to anymore. But once it's melted, it's permanent on there. Nice. All right. Oh, there's one over here. Kind of tipping it in the light. Yeah, it's just a good use for the leftovers. Oh, I like that little bit down there. And I love how, because it's translucent, it creates a really nice, just a nice effect. Now, do you have to do this? Gosh, no, you don't have to do any of this, but how fun is that? See? So there again, when you're looking at the background, you can still see all of those ink stains underneath the glaze. That's the power of glaze, where if you're, let's say you just took green embossing powder, it would look like green spots. Where now this is just, it has a tint to it because it's the different colors, evergreen bough and all the different mix of it. But now you can still see that ink spot underneath the glaze. Just adds a whole new, a shine, a texture. My gosh, think of all the stuff we have on here. We have Spritz, we have Glaze, but yeah, a little bit of water flick, that's pretty fun. Beautiful at Christmas time, believe it or not. Obviously envision a wintry sky, blues, and then just flick a bunch of water. And maybe you just want to use white for snowflakes, right? Maybe you don't want big snowballs, but like you can do little flicks of water, a splatter brush, and you can get little tiny droplets and put white embossing powder for snow. So the idea is not so much about the color. The idea is about, in this case, embossing, I guess, with water and glaze. Now, on my mat, I'm going to just take a Swiffer. You can also take one of those horrible kind of cloth things, microfiber. I cannot touch, I can't touch those. Those skeeve me out. Even this does, but this has a handle. So, but yeah, you could take a microfiber, but do something to get the powder off your mat. Otherwise, on the glass, it's just going to be like a sandy beach. Okay, Mario's laughing because he knows.
You run away from those.
I have issues, and I embrace every single one of them. If you know your issues, you're good. Okay, let's keep going. Let's get some other things going on in the background. Okay, we're going to take some. We already have. Okay, we have that white one. Let's do some black. Okay, nice. All right, just going to take my palette knife. I threw it in the water. Just need to dry it off. Okay. Yeah, see, I talk about microfiber and everyone comes out. Some people have no problem, and other people, it's like, it is just gross, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to do this. I think that's going to be cool, but I want to do this on something smaller. Let me take a small, see, I got paste, I got cardstock. And notice when I'm doing like mucky, messy stuff, I'm working on the craft sheet. So even if you have a, whatever kind of glass mat, the nice thing about working on this is just easier to clean up. So this, I want like part of it to come in. So it can come in on one side or the other. It doesn't really matter. I'll put it here, that's fine. There again, I'll just kind of line it up, hold it with my hands. I don't need tape, I don't need magnets, just because once the paste is in there, these are the same. So, and then I'm just going to kind of skim this through. So this is black on black. This is black opaque texture paste. Texture paste comes in black or white. There's also transparent. That does some cool stuff. Okay, and then we're just going to lift it off. So see, I've scraped off most of it. That's going to go in the water. That's going to dry. Ooh, that's going to be good, right? And I still have some on here, so let's do a little bit more. Let's do this other background. We'll do this. Now, could you use glaze over black paste? Well, not really, because remember, glaze is translucent. So if you do glaze over black, it's not going to be a color other than black. It'll be shiny black, but but you can use other powders. So remember, the whole technique that I'm sharing with you is not, it's not so much about the product in the sense, depending on how you break it down. Like if you wanted this to be metallic, you could sprinkle gold or silver embossing powder over this, let it dry, and then emboss it, and you'll have like gold and black. That would be really cool, right? In fact, hey Mario, in the spinner right there on the bottom where the embossing, can you grab me maybe like a gold metallic embossing powder, please? There should still be time. We'll see if I have time. You'll know. If it doesn't stick, it's dried. But it usually gives you like a good minute or so before it does. Okay, I'm just going to wipe this off. There we are. It's going to be a clear lid from the Ranger ones. Okay, put this under there. Gold is great.
Gold tinsel?
No, tinsel's glitter.
That one?
Yeah, gold is great. Just gold. Any kind of really metallic, but this will show you. This will be kind of cool. Now, I could pour it over the whole thing, but I want some of that black just to be there too. So here I'm just going to kind of focus some of that. See, just sprinkle some of the gold. All this is going to go back. So Just going to do that. So this one, because I don't necessarily want it to cover everything, I'm going to do a quick dump. So in the hopes that I left some black, because if I do the tap, everything's covered. So this one, I just wanted to dump. Now, I'll bring up another thing, because I like to talk maker to maker. I know that many of us, like case in point, you just used embossing powder, you just got out your fancy little Swiffer, you just cleaned up, and now you have an idea to do it, and you're like, I don't want to get out all the embossing powder again and do it and make a mess. Why not? It's there, your idea is there, run with it. So we're going to let that dry. I'm going to go back right here. You can't see it, but you'd feel it. Put that there. It's hanging on like a little hook under my table. Okay, so we've got some stuff pasted. Let's see, I got texture, black, white. That's good. That's probably more than I'll end up using anyway. Thanks. If you can throw that out, thanks. Yeah, put it out. So now I'm just going to seal these up real quick. Again, that goes around and that goes around. I'm telling you, it works. It's so good. It's better than anything. You just need to make sure that really you just kind of see that it doesn't have to be straight and level. I've gotten over that already. Okay. So far, so good. Now let's go ahead and play with some ink. All that stuff is going to dry. We'll bring those back and we'll do some other fun, cool, inky techniques. I'm just going to put my glazes back. So same thing, even with my glazes, I filled a tin with some colors that I wanted, right? Just whatever colors you want to work with, just play around. That's just the distress storage tin. So I've got glazes in there. It just, I mean, other than obviously bringing gold in the mix, it just keeps me from having to think too much. Now, glow, if you haven't used grit paste glow, it's great. It's not fun to demo because you have to shut off the lights to see it, but this is a paste that glows in the dark. So you charge it up with light, and then when the light goes out, it glows green. It's so cool that you can use on so many different makes, and then it glows for a few minutes, and then you just charge it up again with light, and it'll keep glowing. So that's a fun one. I like to make with it. I just don't like to demo with it because it's not very exciting. Okay, now let's go back to some other backgrounds where we'll play with some color. We've got some different papers, and I just want to show how we can kind of play around with some different results when it comes to some products. So I'm going to take some sprays. Let's do, I think I'm going to go back to green. We're going to do something kind of reptilian. So I'm going to take a spray stain. Okay, let's take bundled sage. That will be good. What other colors do I have? Ooh, that's a little dark. Okay, we're going to do some lost shadow. And I'm still going to do that bone background. I haven't forgotten that because I really want to do it. Old paper. Okay, so there's some colors. We're going to do kind of reptile bone palette, if you will. Might even do like just a little brown. Don't judge. No judging. Okay. So I'll start with the greens, and then we'll end up doing the bone. So one of the things that you can do when it comes to a background like this is you have some creative options. We can do ink pads, we can do sprays, we can do all different types of ideas with it. So I'm going to start with just a background. Just going to spray a little bit of water on a tag. We'll take some sprays. This is a little bit of bundled sage. Just spray that. That's Oxide, so that's going to give me kind of a creamy look to start. This is a spray stain, crushed olive. That's a good start. We're going to start with some drying and a little bit of water. Just move it around. All right. That's what we got so far. Keep in mind of your space. Like if this is too close and I'm heating it, I could risk my stencil melting, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, next I'm going to take a little bit of Spritz. So this is still wet. So by adding some Spritz when it's wet, that Spritz will kind of go in with the ink. Very similar like when we sprayed it on the mat and we used it wet. If you spray it over a wet background, it'll kind of move in, unlike spraying it over dry, when if you use it dry, it just looks like, well, looks like Spritz. So this is kind of mixing itself in with that background right now. Let me just do a little bit of peeled paint. So I'm just using a lot of different greens because I want this background to be a little pearly. Crushed olive because, well, we used crushed olive, so this is going to be a good pearl. And shakety shake. If you don't hear that mixing ball, it's not mixing. There we go. Okay. Excellent. Oh, I just saw, who's that? Oh, that's from Simon Says. I'm like, who has mediums 20% off? All right, just gonna, again, spray a little bit more water. So each time when I'm using the water, sometimes it's a mist and sometimes it's droplets. You can kind of see what it's doing. And I just wanna dry this. Don't be afraid to pick up your paper, move it around, get that ink to do something else. You see that line of sludge? That's inevitable. So if you have that line, edit. If you have a cloth, just edit while it's wet, just to take off some of that ink, and then it won't dry with that hard line. But if it has a hard line, it's going to dry with a hard line. So now I'm just drying it complete. So I'm just going to dry the bottom. Notice I'm holding it off the surface to help dry it. But instead of moving the heat tool to my finger, you're just going to flip over your paper. You're welcome. Just to keep that heat tool away from your digits cooking it up. Okay. You can also use a paper towel if you want to, just whatever it is. So I'll just show you this background. You can see it really wasn't much from a product perspective. I mean, we used an Oxide spray, we used a spray stain, and then the rest of the color we're gonna get was because of the Spritz, because of all the different colors of Spritz. And that to me, again, is one of the cool things about having colors. When I pitched this idea to Ranger, they're like, I just, it's kind of like you just want colors of pearl, but like there's no ink in it. And I go, no, because by having these colors of Spritz, to me, it just expands my entire palette of distress. It expands my palette of paint. It expands my palette of sprays, ink pads, because I can use the same colors, but depending on which Spritz I add, it's going to completely morph my background into so many different colors. Like when the light hits it, I'm going to get like the yellows from the crushed olive. I'm going to get some of those other greens from peeled paint and mowed lawn. It adds to a cool effect, a cool background. Now let's just use a little stencil. We're going to do kind of a little reptilian vibe. That'll be good. Let's take an ink pad. You could do this with sprays, but I also think it's good just to have some ink. I'll take a little scorched timber and some forest moss. Let's do that. Okay. All right. Just going to take a bit of grip just so I have it right there. Okay, I'm just going to ink through this. I'm not going to do anything fancy really, but I do need some ink tools. There we go. I think I'll go in with a brush. You can do a brush or a tiny tool, whatever. I'm pretty rough with the stencil, so that's got a little snapper. You can cut it off or leave it. But here I'm just going to take any kind of ink tool that you want. If you have a brush is going to get you into the smaller areas a little bit better. If you're unsure of like inking, the other thing just to remember of a glass mat, yes, you can, if you have a magnetic one, you can do magnets. Mine is not magnetic because I'm not a fan of that, but I am a fan of masking tape because I seem to have plenty of it. So a lot of times I'll just stick that down just as I get started, take my ink off, have just a little bit of grip under there. And that's just going to allow for some inking. You won't contaminate your ink pads, even though I'm going brown to green. Doesn't really matter. I'm not putting on so much color. The only thing you remember is if you had oxides, you wouldn't want to take an oxide and go into the ink. But you could pick up ink and then oxide if you wanted to. You would just need to clean your brush. Okay, so once I have some color down, which I do, I want to just add some shadow. So what I'm going to do with this brush, so when I first used it, did you see that it was like, see how it kind of spreads around? It just makes for easy inking. But I'm going to pick this up and I'm actually going to slide the bristles, right? Because this has a little retractable thing, just right to the color point. I'm going to hold my finger right under that little ring. I just colored that with a Sharpie. And this is going to allow me to now go in, and when I ink in certain areas, you'll see when I lift off the stencil, it's going to be way more concentrated around those areas. So this is just allowing just more of a compact brush. You don't have to do it this way. It's just going to give you some creative options, and I love that with a brush. Okay. Then when you're finished, slide it all the way forward, click it on, click it closed, done. and literally same set of brushes I've had since we launched them. I have a set for inks and a set of Oxide because I don't want to clean them, but you could easily just have one set. And that's, I know it's sad, but that's all you need. Then I'm just going to lift this off. Look at that background. Woo-wee. Cool. We're still going to play around with that a little bit, but I just want to see what I would get. Let's take a smaller piece. Take a little bit of watercolor paper. Let's see if there's anything hanging out on the stencil. So I'm just going to not spray it right over everything. I'm just going to go off camera and just spray my stencil with water. 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 blasts of water. See, so I have droplets. Can you guys see the droplets on there? Just to see what I can get. I'm on the smooth side of paper. I'm going to flip it over. Okay, surface tension, so the ink is not dripping. You don't have no one's going to rain on your parade. Just leave it. Figure out where you want to put it. Place it down. Commit. You can take a brayer if you want. Some people like to do a brayer for this step. I'm just going to take a paper towel, place it down, and then just press. Okay. All we're doing is we're really printing from that stencil. I'm using the paper towel that if I have any ink that kind of comes out, it's just going to soak in. So see, not a lot of ink, but see those little drippity bits? If you don't, you might have it go into those areas. And this is going to be a really, really light, very faint texture on the background, but I love it. So this could have already been inked as long as it was a lighter color. This could have been antique linen or whatever. That's just going to go into the water. It'll rinse right off. Clean that off. So someone asked what tin this was. This is the tin that actually holds your mini distress inks. Again, I just took out the insert and I put in my brushes. And I use this little tin not only for my blending brushes, but I showed this in one of the videos. I use it for my tiny tools as well. So here I have, you know, this is a little more dedicated. Pink, red, orange, yellow, green, light teal, blue, purple, kind of muck, beige, brown, and black. And then I took out the little tray from the packaging, cut it, and I double stick taped it in the back. One, it has a great place for the foams, and two, it just kind of, I mean, you can still see it moves if you throw it around in the air, but it keeps it pretty convenient. So then I just, if I go somewhere, I can just have these and I have all of the tools that I need for blending. File it under things you never asked, but now you know. Okay, so what could we do with this now that we did a print? Well, we're gonna work on our backgrounds a little bit. Okay, this one, I think it just looks so too soft and blended. So I'm gonna take some water, do just our little splatter, not a lot, but this is going to give it, again, some more texture. I'm gonna dry it. You could lift it off. You could go in with a paper towel and lift it off if you wanted that color to be white or lighter, but trust me, just drying it, you'll see what I mean about what water does. Water and distress, it's just, yeah, it's a perfect match. I'm gonna add some more because I really want some more texture. This time, I'm gonna add some water, dry it, and this layer I'm gonna lift. You'll see. Just keep your paper towels. You can use them for different things. Just dry it a little bit, print, lift, and then that's what it just gave that background. You may not like it. I like it because I just think, again, it's a tag. Maybe it's going to be a background. Maybe it's something I'm going to cut up, but I love the fact that I've got that electric, limey, oxidey background. You can still see that even though I ink blended over the top, the spritz will come through. Why? Because this is a pigment. Pigment dominates dye, no matter what. So spritz could be a top layer, but even if you ink over spritz with a dye ink, with distress ink, okay, not oxide, because oxide also has a pigment, it would kind of cancel each other out. But even if you've spritzed on the top, you could ink over it with distress ink, and the spritz will still come through because pigment, which is what these are, mica is a pigment, dominates dye. Okay, let's do this little background one. Let's take we'll take a little tiny tool. I'll grab a little bit of beige. Not that tin, not that tin, not that tin. Are you? Oh no, nothing. It's the tin that I have at the very, very bottom.
Of course.
Of course. We'll do a little bit of old paper. So we'll take one of these little tiny tools, just so you can see, again, it's not about finishing anything. It's just giving you ideas about a print. Sometimes people, when they print, they think, oh, you know, I have to go in, I like to ink on the glass. Some people think, oh, you know what, I need to already plan a background before I do a print. No, not necessarily. You can totally do a monoprint. Just remember that if you're going to ink over it, which I'm going to do something lighter than what you printed in. For example, if I inked in forest moss or scorched timber, then yes, it would cover up my monoprint. But doing something lighter, and old paper has that weird little greenish, beigeish hue, is perfect. Just using a tiny tool. Glass just gives you way more slip and slide than inking on a mat. All right. Put that back. There we are. Now we can take a little bit of color. I could have a regulation one, but hey, it's fun just having this. Now I'm just going to go in and just do a little bit of inking to the edge. Now, when I ink the edge of something, I hope the camera's picking this up. See that my hand is just working in that little area and my paper is moving? It helps ink the edges so much easier because you're not tiring yourself out. You're not changing your pressure. You're not changing the angle of your hand. You're just using the glass. And you're using all that ink because the glass isn't going to absorb any of the ink. And then go back the other way just to kind of fill in the blanks because the ink gets less and less as you go. That's simple. Easy with just a swipe of that. Just move the paper. So a glass mat is very helpful, but you want to work with, like my whole hand was resting, and you work where you're comfortable. You can use any kind of ink tool, but I got to say, like, I do love this silly little, blending tool. All right. Same thing. I'm a water splatter. Why? Because I just think that when I add a little water, it just makes my background looks more imperfect, I guess. There you go. Okay. There's another background. So this background I think would be good for, well, a lot of things for Halloween, but just kind of creepy. But you kind of get a 2-for-1 because you're doing that anyway. So if you always have a little scrap paper, spray it and print it. You get what you get. If you don't like the print, ink over it. Do whatever you want. But to me, I like the fact that taking a stencil, you're kind of getting a couple of different designs, different backgrounds. All right. So far, so good. Okay, let's put these back. Okay, get rid of that. I got stuff everywhere, you guys. Okay, now let's work on just a bone background, and then I'm going to take some embossing folders because I think I'm going to have enough more backgrounds than I need. But this isn't about using them all in this one. This is about giving you some ideas. So this one we're going to get really kind of mucky and juicy and just do some different things to the background. I'm going to take one of my favorites, which is Phantom Mist. If I'm doing anything ghosty, I just like this. This is a mica stain. The mica stains are available open stock this year, which is really nice. So if you don't have a stash and you want to pick and choose your colors, it is nice. Or if you have some that you need to replace, that's really nice. I also have a little lost shadow and a spray stain, weathered wood and oxide. So you can already tell my palette is a little bit of boo. And then old paper, that's going to give me that greenish, what you saw from the ink. And then from a Spritz, I'm going to use some antique linen, probably some weathered wood. That's going to give me kind of a, maybe I'll use a little bit of brown. Okay, because, well, I need some. So let's see if I have probably, let's see, did I get even a little pumice stone? I'll take it. Okay, so that's it. We're throwing caution to the wind. So I'm going to take some pumice stone down here. Then I'll do a little bit of scorched timber. So that's going to be my ink palette over there. I'm going to spray that with water. I'm going to break that up. Then on this, I'm going to spritz with some water. That's just watercolor cardstock. And then let's go for it. So I'll bring these off to the side just so I don't cover them with ink. I'm going to just do like a little weathered wood. You don't need much. When you're doing backgrounds, just kind of let them do their thing. Here's a little lost shadow. Lost shadow is interesting because it kind of goes on, see, like a little pinky, but it really does dry perfect. We're going to take some Phantom Mist. Now this has been sitting upright, so see, look at all that sludge. Yikes. All right, I'll let it relax. I'm not going to wait. I'll let it relax first, and then I'll take a little bit of old paper. See, that's that greenish bone muck. Let's just dry. No need to do much. Oh, I love that people are making along. That's good. I think just making along is, even if you, I mean, you're just playing. You're giving yourself some time to play. Play and create. Okay, so here's our first background, just sprays. Now sprays are sprays because they spray. So embrace the spray. Oh, you could saturate it if you want, but I do love that. I agree, Brett. Ooh, she said Decayed or is her color scheme. I don't know if I put Decayed in my mic stand. I'd be shocked if I didn't, because it is one of my all-time favorites, and I bet it's this one at the end. No? See, I didn't. Now I'm gonna want Decayed because you said that. And I think Mario's already on it because he heard me. Just a mica stain. Yeah, because that is a good color. There we go. So what I did is I just use those ink drops, because see how the ink drops are going to give me a little bit more randomness? Okay, that's what it's all about.
You did have it right in the front.
Thanks, I did. See, I think I switched out Iron Gate for Decayed. Thanks, Mario.
Sure.
All right, we'll put that there. So I'm just building up the background. Again, just doing something kind of crazy, weird. You don't have to, don't overthink. And I hope that when you see these demos, I know sometimes demos bore people because they're like, get on to the make. Well, it's not always about making. This is making. Making backgrounds is part of the process that you can sit and you have a whole pile of stuff that you can knock out cards or die cut things in no time. Your die cuts don't always need to be solid color cardstock. It's great if that's what you want to do, but you can also just take that and put that over cardstock. So now we're going to add some of these. Now these have color. So mica stain is a color ink with a pearl. So beware when you're putting this on there, because if you blast it, you're just going to get a blast of color. So just keep that in mind. Because of that, I'm going to spray these over here because I'm going to treat it almost, you know, as if it were ink. You can see the color. Different than Spritz. Spritz I'm going to use as a top coat. So there's some Phantom Mist, which is kind of a bluey, silvery gray, and then Decayed, which is, I have no idea other than its goodness. Okay, break this up, and let's go right into this. Okay, see, look at that. You can already see. Now, as things are building up, don't be afraid to edit. Like right now, I think like the center is just looking like a giant bruise. So I'm going to hit that with some water, and I'm just going to shake. So now I'm going to just get some drippage. That's going to create some, and I'm sure that's a word, but it's going to create just a whole different look. So not everything has to be all splattery. Perfect. Okay. Nice. I'm just trying this. And people say like, well, how do you know when to stop? As soon as you think that, you should stop. That's my advice to you. Doesn't mean you can't go back and edit it later where you pick it up and you go, oh, you know what, I should stencil this, or I should ink the edges. But if you're ever working and you wonder, should I stop? Even if you have ink or something else, start another background. But stopping and pausing for even that moment is telling you that you actually like it. That's really the thing to remember. You're like, if you're stopping for even a second and hesitating, you like it. Notice, like, I'm not, other than showing you on the camera, I'm not sitting there going, like, because I know, like now I'm getting to the point where I like it, because I added that extra drip on the top. But that's just another bit of advice when you're creating. Just, if you think you like it, stop. Okay. So here's what we've got so far. We've got a great inky layer. You can see the mica stain. When I said like, be aware of it. It's intense because it's a color, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you can't use it all together. But now we're going to add some Spritz. Now for this, because I already have a lot of shine, my Spritz at this case is just going to be more of a top coat. So I'm just going to take some antique linen, shake that up, and we'll take some weathered wood. Pretty similar to this, but Decayed I think has a lot more like brownish gold in it. And we're gonna just spritz this over the top. So this one's definitely more splattery. So I'm keeping my distance and just kind of, you probably can't even see much happening on camera, but there's little spritzes on there. There you can go, you can see it when it's wet. And then I'll just dry it. And that's just gonna add a whole nother layer of color. And I'll show you antique linen really just on like black cardstock, just so you can see it's so pretty. Okay, there's my grungy kind of bone background, which I think is good. So I even think like what I'm going to do is just give it some personality right now. I'm not done with it. This is watercolor cardstock. This is pretty heavy. And I'm just gonna, so I don't care if it's tearing. If you don't want to tear it, you might want to, you know, you can mist it from the back if you don't want your inks to run. If you mist it from the top, the ink is going to run. Okay, that's what I have. That's going to be good. And now I will take a little tiny blending tool. Let's just see what sludge is on there, if I have any. Yeah, there's a little bit on there. I'm going to get a little bit more. I'll take some scorched again. You could also do this with black soot if you wanted to. But all I'm doing with this tiny tool is just kind of going over those areas that I added that wrinkle to, right? So see, by wetting the back, oh yeah, I'm getting way better wrinkles just misting the back of the paper. You guys see that? Okay. So I'm not doing a circular motion. I'm just kind of watching like lines on a map, okay? And just following those. And if you want another one, add it. Paper doesn't have a memory, so I say that because I think people are like, oh no, it's going to be so heartbroken that it's wrinkled or crinkled or it's torn here. No, when you glue that down, it's not torn. Nobody knows. Or when you die cut it. But now, now we're getting somewhere. I think that just adds a cool background that if we were going to put this on a card, maybe it's going to have like a skeleton over it. Like, look at that. Look at those age spots and crinkles and that little shine. That's goodness right there. You could iron this or just run it through your Sizzix machine or whatever machine you have. Just put it between two cutting pads. You don't, you know, if you need the pressure, just put it on the outside of an embossing folder, you know, so you get that pressure and then it will flatten it right out. Or you can use a laminator, you know, obviously without the laminating sheets. There's a lot of ways that you can flatten out cardstock besides just ironing. So that's a fun background. Okay. Alrighty. You guys doing okay? Good, good. Okay, perfect. All right, let's just pick out some other things just to talk about because I think I have a lot of backgrounds. Mario, would you mind checking on those
Sure.
texture paste, please, just to see how they are? I'm going to put a couple things back and we're going to talk. Look at that. See, I already throw stuff everywhere. This is where tins they come in handy, especially if it's just you and your demo table, because it does allow you just to keep things somewhat organized yet right there at the ready. And I got my mica stains over here in my painty one. Okay, let me clean this up. Just water. If you have paint or dried mediums on your glass, use hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer will always break down those dry mediums. Okay?
There you go.
How'd we do? Excellent, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's just jump back to these just to give you some ideas of what we can do with them. So thanks, Mario. Okay. So remember, these are paste. So this is crypt where we got some brick. This is white opaque. This is black. These are paste with embossing glaze sprinkled on, but we haven't embossed it yet. So I'm going to emboss it. I heat this up. Okay. So now we're going to melt the glaze. Now because the paste is dried, it's just going to emboss the glaze, but it won't make everything explode like a marshmallow. If you did it while everything was wet, that's what you would have. And sometimes the white paste like overtakes the glaze. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Ooh, that's good. Let's move it around over here. Let me get my little hands. My embossing gun is fire. Okay. And just kind of tip it to the light. You just want to melt it to a nice shine. Glaze is going to give you such a... I love how these colors of glaze also blend together because they're translucent. So that little sprinkly mix. So nice. Look at that. Look at those. Pretty. All right, let's do the metallic one. Remember, this was black paste with gold embossing powder. Metallic is always magic to watch, isn't it? Ooh, look at that. Oh, come on. Beautiful. Like Midas. Ooh, I love it. And so this one is where I tried to focus it in some areas and have it fade out on others. Remember, I just picked it up and dumped it. Success. I'll show you what I mean. So on this one, see how we've got that beautiful gold? but then you see how like more black is showing up. It still has a couple little flecks, but I love like when you look at the background overall, you see metallic, but you see some of that black. And this, it's going to stay pliable. We can now ink it. You could have done this before or after. Like you could have done this over an inked background, but we can also ink over these, be that an ink pad or sprays or whatever. But I really wanted to talk about the brick I just did because, well, it's fun and I'll probably ink one of these. The thing to understand when it comes to paste is that they have different properties, whether you cover them or whether you leave them uncovered, okay? A lot of people are into tinting paste and having colors, and you can tint these. You can certainly tint the white. I would recommend using acrylic paint for tinting this because it is an opaque one. But more importantly, I love the fact that I could add color to these afterwards. So I would say most of the time when I use paste, I use it this way. I put it on an unfinished surface and then I try to just add color a little bit later. So this one, let's add some color to it. These will go pretty quick. All right. Now because my paste is sealed, it's got glaze on it, I don't have to worry about contaminating or altering my color at all. And I'm taking all the stuff. Let's see, weathered wood. What is this one? Oh, a little ice spruce. Clean area. And I know I think that's going to be good. A little ice spruce. Perfect. Let's dip it in there. Okay. So the reason I started with spray is because I have a textured background, and to try to get all of your ink in a textured background from printing is a challenge. Now I'm switching to a heat tool. Now if you only have one, you can use just one. But just be reminded that you still emboss this with embossing powder. And if you only have an embossing gun, then when you go to dry your ink, just give it a second to cool before you touch it because you probably would remelt your embossing powder. The Ranger heat tool, yes, you can emboss with it, but it just takes forever. So I don't emboss with it. And I like that because, see, I can go right over my glaze and lift off that ink. So it's just a really pretty background. It has some cool texture. Again, I can cut this. This could be for like a cauldron, kind of looks like a bubbling cauldron. So maybe you have a cauldron die cut or a vial, a apothecary, some laboratory thing, but that's just fun. A stencil that's not necessarily meant for Halloween, but you turn it into Halloween. So that's an easy thing to do. A background like this, if it's black, well, we have options. If you're going to do something like this, my advice would be to go with something like an oxide or a paint because we want something opaque that's going to show up. But here I'll just take some oxide spray and I'm just going to spray it in areas. This one's going to go right over the top. I'm not too bothered by like how it's going to look right now. Okay, and let's dry it. Now what's really interesting about this is that the paste is going to absorb the color. So I can just go in and just add a little bit of water on the top and just get some of that oxide to kind of drip down the side. See that? A little drippage. There we go. Let's just dry it. So I love that the paste will absorb the color. So even though I do oxide and this paste was black, it's going to give me just kind of a ghosty vibe. Obviously we could have used acrylic paint, we could have done all sorts of things, but I just love how because if this paste was white, it would really stand out, you know, and you'll see on the other one. And that's why we just need different paste. They just do different things. Obviously I think it's more dramatic with metallic powder, even though metallic is going to be opaque. I love seeing some of that black. Get yourself a cloth. I mean, not to sound like a 5-year-old, but get yourself an Inky Binky. Get yourself a blanket that, like, as a maker, you cannot go anywhere without it. And it's just tucked into my pocket. Maybe you have an apron that you want to have, but it's just so nice to just don't work in a mess. Come on, look at that. That is really good. So this one's going to be, calling for some spritz here because we're just going to add some on there. We're going to spritz. There's a little antique linen. A little spritz will do ya. And we're going to take a little bit of weathered wood. And so this one, see, I'm keeping my distance because I want more of that splattery spritz. Let's dry it as well. Now, again, you don't have to use a heat tool. Everything could set aside to dry. If you're one of those multitaskers where you're dipping and going, throw it off and come back, okay? Now see, like that one right there? Edit. Boop. Edit. Done. Boop. That was like a Kathy Z move right there with the boop. Boop is a powerful word. Look at that. So see, we still have that ghosty, milky vibe, but now it just, that little spritz just adds a whole nother look to it. And it started out as just, so this is distressed black heavy stock, just the darkest cardstock. It's got this suede feel, but man, that's a good one. So far we've altered completely different ways. Now let's do this one. Okay, spray a little water. I do water first just because I like the ability to have the colors blend on contacts. And I'm just gonna go in with some spray stain. That was a little carved pumpkin. We'll take a little touch of fossilized amber. I don't have much of it. Ooh, that's good. That's enough. And let's do a touch of Villainous Potion. Now, keep in mind that my inks are wet. So, you know, depending on where you put color, it's going to overtake it. So right now, kind of looks like Buckshot Bill with all those little shots right there. So I'm just going to spray it. And just like I said before, just let it move. It's a background. It doesn't have to be all perfect. Let it just move. There we go. Once you're happy with the movement, dry it. All right. Perfect. Don't be afraid. Don't overthink the ink. If you think you should use it, get it in your hand and use it. Okay. So right now I've just dried it a little bit. You can see it's far from dry, but I think that I've managed to get all the colors to kind of sit where I want them to sit. I'm going to dab this off. Let's move this. Move that out of the way. And then we'll go in with some Spritz. So I'm going to add some seedless preserves. This is the other part of Spritz that is important to remember. Because these are distressed colors, and remember, it's just that particular mica powder, you can then mimic your background with a Spritz. It doesn't always have to go over the whole thing, okay? So far we've seen that we can use it like dipping in itself. We've spritzed over it. We've used it with Oxide. Gosh, we've used it with everything. Now I'm going to go in and actually spritz in the areas that I see that particular color. And I can still mix. I don't have to use all of them. You don't always have to mix, but like I'm putting purple where there's purple. I'm going to put orange where there's orange. So a little spice marmalade, a little rusty hinge. Perfect. So I'm just going to spritz there. Could you dry in between? If you felt that you needed to, I don't think it's necessary to do that. Okay, because I want the spritz to also kind of blend in the background. Now I'm going to use a little fossilized amber because I used fossilized amber, and that's going to give me kind of yellow. But down here, I don't know what's happened. It looks, I don't know, it looks a bit kind of magic down here. So maybe I'll do a little, it looks kind of greenish. So I think I'm going to do some crushed olive because although it shouldn't, it did. So why not? Just spritz. Okay. Now let's dry it. So now we'll completely finish its drying. So we did our inky background. We dried it a little bit. All right. Just going to finish drying it. Now the reason I wanted to do the spritz while the background was still wet is because I wanted the spritz to kind of take on, I'll just say, the look of the background, if you will. I wanted it to look like it was part of the ink. But I think the ability to control where that shine is it's my favorite thing about Spritz. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be this. It would be the fact that I have coordinating colors of just pearl that I can use over my sprays, over my ink, over my oxide, over any of that. And again, I'm just drying it. So here's what we have. So we have our inked background, but now when the light hits it, you'll see like orange is orange, purple is purple, yellow is yellow, and that little bit of green down there, that little crushed olive, and then more purple. So I love the fact that my background, the shine of my background actually mimics the color. So we didn't put a pearl over the whole thing. We didn't put like white or orange or whatever, because we did that at the beginning. Remember taking a different color and putting it over a background? This is about taking a coordinating color that you use, doesn't have to be exact, and then throw that in. And this way, your background still looks great, but when the light hits it, it's like, it's almost as if you use an iridescent ink, but because it's not the same like a mica stain, you're getting all of those effects of a color and a different, almost coordinating yet contrasting color of pearl. It's really pretty. Okay, so for this background, You know, I love the fact that it's got color on there, but I also feel sometimes that, like, you know, it tends to cover up a lot of the stencil. So this is an option. You don't have to do that, but if you want to, take a paper towel, just kind of just dampen it. Don't use a baby wipe, that's going to be too wet, but we want just like a damp paper towel, and then just go over that paste a little bit. Okay, hold it down for a minute and just dab. What it's doing is it's lifting off the color, because notice that the paste is designed to absorb the color exactly as the paper did. That's its purpose. But this, I'm not going over the whole thing. See, I'm just adding some highlights. So this will lift off just the ink that's in that paste, and now it highlights it a little bit. So I love that as well, because now I think my background, my pattern just stands out a little bit more. So you can edit, just keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to put as much ink as you want on your background. And then of course, you know, just, I'm gonna add splatters. Just, that's me. I do me, you do you. Okay, little heat tool, and we're going to dab that down. So I just saw someone say, can you do that on black? These are all inks. Inks are translucent, so you couldn't do this on black because dyes don't show up on black. Dyes need to be on something light. You need to use Oxide like we did on this black. So, but could you do the white texture paste? Yes. Could you then spray the colors? Yeah, then your texture would be a color, but your background would still be black. Your background would never be all those colors, but you could do it with Spritz. The Spritz would show up on black because they're all pigment. Okay, my gosh, so many. All right, got one more. Let's see what I'm gonna do on this one. Okay, let's just do, just because I feel that it is a bit regal. Let's do, that's it. Do a little bit of mulled cider. Specimen could be good. Ooh, that could be treacherous. I'm not gonna do it. See, I even know. Trust your judgment. I'm like, ooh, let's do a dark green and a dark orange. Yeah, and then you'll end up with a dark brown. So there we go. Could you tear that? Sure. I don't know. Are you asking about the paper? Yes. The black? Yes. The craft? Yes. This? Yes. And you could die cut all this. You could die cut right through any of these pastes anytime. Okay, so this is mulled cider mica stain. This is going to be a color. It's a pretty intense color. It's close to crackling campfire. So you can see already, like, it's just really pretty. But it means business. So doesn't mean you can't use other things with it, but it tends to really mean business. All right, just gonna use this one color, just like it. There's beauty in simplicity. So, you know, if you like just that little spray, that saturation and then nothing, then leave it. Doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You could still go in an ink blend and do all your other things, but backgrounds don't always have to be complicated. I talk a lot about casseroles whenever I demo. I'm like, I think sometimes as makers, we like to do the casserole, you know, throw everything in and see how it works. Well, if you've ever had casseroles, sometimes they're good. Other times, they're not so good. So you don't have to like throw everything in it. Sometimes you just do it and you're like, you know what? That's great, because we're getting the color, we're getting that little sheen of mica, and we're getting that metallic, that gold metallic in the background. So don't always feel the pressure of like, well, he used 12 things, I need to use 12. No, you don't. You just need to use what you like. I am going over with a damp cloth because I want to take off any of that ink that sits on top of the embossing, because that ink, see how much shinier it is? The ink will never dry on top of this, meaning when you touch it, because embossing powder is plastic when it melts. Okay, so just taking that off, and then it brought up so much more shine in that gold. Okay, all right, let's bring in this pile of stuff. Gosh, that was fun. So much fun. Just seeing so many different ways that we can incorporate. Well, we have mica stain here with black paste and metallic powder. We've got a white opaque paste with our inks and our coordinating colors of Spritz, which are really, really beautiful. Yes, you can die cut through glaze. When I held this up, you can die cut. Embossing powder, you can die cut. Texture, all that. I'll do that another time. I love this two-tone background, right? So purple Spritz on orange ink, orange on orange, so you can do matchy-matchy if you want. Look at all this stuff. We've got that kind of cool grungy bone thing. This is going to be beautiful flat. I'll probably iron that flat during the break. I love the reptile look of those with the stencil. I do love this, embossing with water. Look at that glaze, that spritz, and that ink. Ooh, look at that background. Remember, this was Oxide and some ink and some spritz on craft. See this test piece? Look how cool it is when we come back to it. Remember, this was a hot mess when I was just like prize ribbon, salt water. But now when I pick it up, I'm like, hey, that's nice. Even if you don't like this, just edit that. That's cool. That's like a stormy, that's a really great stormy sky. Look at these. Yum and yum. A lot of just pile of fun. So what could you do with these? Well, there's a lot of things you can do. You can take any of your stamps and you can stamp on them. You know, if you want to create a background and let's say you have, well, let's see what background do I want to do this to. I'll just take this one. This isn't much. I do like that one. Okay. Let's just say we could even do this one. Let's just say you had something that you wanted to add another texture to. Find yourself some background stamps that just have weirdness that you don't think you'd ever use, because those are the ones that you probably will use. This is a great one. This is called Shattered. You can take it off of this. I just use it right on the sheet, so you do what you want, okay? Okay, it cannot be far. There it is. I knew it wasn't. I'm just looking for my archival pad. I'm just going to take an ink pad and I'm just going to swipe, because typically when we're stamping, we would want to go in and tap, tap, tap. I'm just going to swipe. You can just take this entire piece and just place it over and just press down, okay? This could be gold ink, this could be black, this could be anything, but it just creates a cool marbly look over a background. A good fill in the blanker, right? Because I'm sure that blank space drove a lot of people crazy, but by adding a stamp that has open area, it just adds a cool effect. And like I said, it could be any color. It didn't have to be black, but I knew black would really show up and kind of work with the background. It would work with even something like this. Would I consider this something finished? No, I would still want, like, I'm all about embracing the space, but this is like a vacant lot over here. So that's not gonna be me, but I'll still show you about taking a big background stamp and doing that. I also did a big one like this called Bubbles, and it just, I think it's called Bubbles, and it just looks like bubbly things, but more random. But this kind of looks like spray webbing or crackle to me. You can put it on a block. You can take it off a block as well. So like, for example, if I am going to stamp the whole thing just because I love the fact that it's just going to web off of this background. I think I'll go here. That's going to work. And I'm just going to press through. Just makes it easy. There we go. That's a cool background now. So and because I used archival, this is the other thing about stamping something permanent, because if I want to go in now and ink blend or spray on this, I can, because this ink is permanent. If I would have just stamped in regular distress ink, this would bleed if I got it wet again. But see, like, to me, that completely transforms a background. So sometimes people look at stamps like this and they're like, ugh, what would I ever do with it? Whatever you want. And we share all sorts of different ideas. There's great double stamping techniques that Stacy shared about stamping this over, bold text. There's a lot of great ideas. But you can take things like a leaf stamp, and you can stamp a lot of these backgrounds. Again, when it comes to die cuts, let's talk about that. And I'm not talking about this to yuck your yum, okay? Because I know some people are like, I am so jazzed, I'm going to go crazy. Okay, keep this in mind. I do not control the life cycle of product, but this, one of my favorite dies for fall, okay? These dies that I'm showing you, these are all retired. Doesn't mean you can't get them, it just means it's no longer available. So leaf fragments, this creates an open leaf, that's a good one, retired. That's a fun whimsical leaf, retired. Feathers, retired. One of my favorites, tattered leaves, retired. These are still available, there's not many. These are just kind of more skeleton leaves, kind of a negative leaf, and then funky. So these are all available, but all of my favorite for fall, these are retired. But if you can still get them, or even if you have them, get them out of your stash, because these are really great to just take a die and die cut a background. Let's take one of this. This would be my ultimate favorite leaf stamp or leaf die of all times. If I had to like give up that, I would just keep that one. All right. You can take sanitizer. In this case, I've got archival on here, so I'm just going to use rubbing alcohol just to clean some of that stamping off, but you can use stamp cleaner. You'll also see that it starts to stain your mat because I put alcohol in there. It is what it is. I'm not bothered by it. let's just take a die like this. Oh, this is a good leafy fragment. Let's see, what do we want to cut through? We can still do this one. I think I want to do, yeah, like a background like this. This is going to be good. This will be a fun one. Okay, so let's take, all right, just going to take a background. Just going to cut it about here. Cut it about here. Edit. Then we'll take, what do I want? Let's take a sidekick. That leaf is going to be cool. I think that's going to be good, like really right here. I'll take that. Let's take my cutting pads. You can use a sidekick for your dies as long as it fits in there. You're going to be good to go. If it's got detail, run it through twice. All you got to do is checkity check, slide it off, flip it over. Do you see the cut lines? Yep, then it cut. Done. Here I have a frame. So what can this be? Well, this could go over another card. Probably not this background, but you get the idea. Now you have a negative frame that you could ink and use on a card. And then we've got this. So let me get my pick. Pick out these little elements. You can use a die pick, a craft pick, whatever it is that you want to use. There we go. I'm just going to get that to where I can grab it. Excellent. Take your little flickety bits, get those out. Look at that leaf. See? Now let's ink it. That's really going to put it to the test. Okay, clean your die. Who doesn't clean their die like that? Just clean. You can still poke out the little bits if you need to, but that little bounce, it's a great way. It makes a great sound. Like wind chimes in the classroom. Just like, it's like being one. Just use wind chimes. It is. Okay, so we're going to take this. Let's go back to our tiny blending tool. This is where these things are worth everything to me. It was actually the main reason I wanted to do a tiny blending tool, because when you're inking die cuts, it just allows you just to get into those edges so much easier, and it holds so much ink. And then I can just take that and just like lightly go over those openings. Look at that, see? And then I can still blend in some more if I want, just to add some, this is more of a pouncing, just to create a shadow. But yeah, beautiful looking leaf, see? Because it's got all those colors. So that's what you can do with a lot of backgrounds, even the ones that you hate. Just take them and you can go in and you can shape this, you can do score lines, you can run it through another embossing folder, you can even texture. Maybe you have an embossing folder of leaves, but put this in, it's still going to create the veins. So if you have, not to get you all annoyed, but if you had like this folder that has all these great leaf veins, just take a leaf like this, figure out like where it's going to fit best, and then run it through. I happen to have my folder way right over here. Not that I'm going to bring it onto camera, but I didn't leave you. I'm just going to emboss this. Let me grab this real quick. Take this out. Take this out. Mario's right there with the hand because he knows it's like literally sitting on my little rolly cart. Let's see.
Right.
Thanks. Oh my gosh. I was winding my mic. You guys, if you saw me off camera, I was literally winding my microphone cord through the fold away. Thanks, Mario. This is what I was doing. Okay.
We need a camera of everything.
Oh my gosh.
On here in the background.
So this creates that. Come on. See? Use what you have. It's not a matchy-matchy, but is that going to give you the illusion, the effect? You bet it is. Very cool. So something really, really fun. I think that it's good. All right. Beautiful. So when you ask yourself, like, what am I doing with all of those crazy backgrounds? Do I have to stamp on them? Do they have to be cards? They're just creative options, whatever it is that you want to have. It could be a frame. You could sew around it. You could put a piece of acetate and make a shakety shake out of it. It could be a leaf, but using the colors, and remember, mixing your inks and Spritz. Spritz is what's going to give you that magic without creating the mud. Gosh, that should be a tagline. Creating all the magic without the mud. Is that what I said? I don't know. I can't even remember what I said 2 seconds ago. Okay, so we talked about folders. We talked about dies. We talked about stamps. There's so many different things that you can use with the products that you have. That's what I think playing is all about. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about, just so you guys I gotta look at the time. Oh, we got a little bit of time left. Gotta wrap this up so we can reset for the next show. Okay, objects, elements. Just because we were doing all these backgrounds, you can still utilize any of these ideas and techniques and effects on common objects. First, we'll start with ribbon. You can get seam binding ribbon. This is a rayon ribbon, or you can buy ribbon from the craft store as long as it is like a rayon material. And you can ink it, so you can color it. Here I just took some of this ribbon. It used to be crinkle ribbon in Ideology, but this is just regular seam binding ribbon. And I sprayed it black. So I just used a spray stain, you know, put some gloves on, you know, wad it up, do that. A lot of people like to do this maybe in a plastic bag or maybe a piece of plastic wrap, and you can squish it up and you can color your ribbon, okay? Or you can buy pre-colored ribbon. You might want to buy like black rayon ribbon because they have it. But what I want to show you is, what if you have that ribbon and you want to make it in different colors? What if you want to have a pearlescent orange ribbon, or a pearlescent purple ribbon, or a pearlescent green? Look, that's Haunted Mansion vibes. All this is spritz over the top of the ribbon. That's it. So you can take your distressed spritz and spritz it over the top of it, and it will create this effect. Now, what I do is I still like to leave it in a ball and put a lot of spritz on there, let it dry, and then when you open it, this way the spritz, see how it like, it's kind of fading in and out? So it's not fully purple, because I love that look. And once it dries, it's on there. Again, it's not washable, it's not waterproof, but it's craftable, it's makeable, so you can use it. And that's really what I love about the shine of this. Keep in mind though that when you add your spritz, the black will re-wet, so keep it with gloves, because you'll scrunch this up and you'll have black all over your hands. But when it dries, I just think it creates the most cool Halloween creepy ribbon. So if you already had black ribbon, you could skip the inky step and just spritz it. Right? So that's just an idea for spritz, of looking for things that you can alter and give it a shine, a pearlescent shine, which I absolutely love. The other thing I'll talk about, I did do my homework, I'll be honest, because when I talked about this in the last slide, we talked about Bouquet and the fact that this has been retired. I mean, it was a panic. I remember even Zoe Human, she's like, I'm not gonna lie, I did some panic buying. I'm like, yeah, I wish I would have, because this, friends, is my last pack. So I'll probably be doing an order from Simon Says, because when Heidi was here, she's like, I think I bought everything else that Advantis had. I bought the rest of the stock. I'm like, good for you, which wasn't a lot. I think there was just a, you know, maybe 50 or 60 units. But these are paper flowers that you can ink. Now, in previous lives, I've talked about creating these blooms. These are done with mica stain. So see how pretty they are? But here's what I want to show you on this one. This will kind of be the wrap up of this first live. I love the Haunted Mansion, no doubt about it. Look at these creepy corpse bride blooms. This is kind of like what's in the conservatory, you know, when you go by. It's got green, milky, black, gray. So you can make some very cool, creepy Halloween flowers using Bouquet. And I like to show you that because you might look at that and be like, oh, I'm not really a flowery person. I'm more of a ghoul kind of person. Well, here you go. Ghoul on. So what we can do, let's move some of these backgrounds. It's pretty much like an anything goes, okay? It is. It's really just an anything goes on this one. You can use whatever stuff you want to work with. Here, let me just take these out. So when you get them, they come in like, they're wired, but then you get a bunch, and then the bunch you can rip apart to make other bunches. It's just paper that holds them together. And once you break off that paper seal, then you have other little clusters. And then when you take that off, you have individual flowers. These are all wired and they're all paper wrapped. So, but I like to just work with them more like that. These are paper, so if you dip them, you want to be careful because they have a tendency to want to dissolve if you just get them too wet because they're paper. So I prefer more of the spray method. I'm going to take a splat box because we're going to get a little juicy on this one. There we go. I'm going to actually glove up. I did wait till the end, although, Mario, you asked me, like, do you have gloves? I'm like, totally. Do I know what I did with them? Totally I don't. Can you grab two? They're right there at the bottom, please. Sure. Thanks. I literally had them because I knew. Thanks. What I saw them out too. I know. What did I do with them? Well, I have them, but I think oh, here they are. They just fell in. I grabbed so much paper. Just put on a glove. you don't, I mean, I'm just going to use one glove because that's going to be the glove I'm going to spray into. But I think it's going to be really important because you want to be able to like manipulate the flowers. That's all I'm telling you. Because these things, they have a lot of angles, a lot of little ridges. Okay, so to create these, just pick some creepy colors. That's all I could suggest is pick some creepy colors. So the creepy colors I'm going to go with is black, of course, because I want them to be dark black. I'm going to use a little cracked pistachio. That's going to give me some kind of creamy, dreamy kind of look. I'll use, I don't think I want to use that one. I'll use this. This will also be a good color. A little weathered wood. So my main color, and I think I'll even use some Phantom Mist, because why not? Okay. And then for my spritz, I'm going to use some cracked pistachio, just because I want more of that. I think it just adds like that ghostly glow. You see that? Okay. So those are going to be all my colors. So whatever you need to shake up, shake ahead of time. Okay. You need to do that. Perfect. Get rid of these. And once I've shaken them up, I'm leaving them on their sides. They'll stay mixed a little bit longer. And we're going to start just doing them black. Okay. So I'll put these together. I'll kind of open them up. Now they are paper, and just like what I do when I'm doing cardstock, I tend to just add a little bit of water first. That just helps the ink when it hits it kind of bloom a little bit more. And because black means business. So see, by moving it in the splat box, it's allowing me to get into all the angles because there are a lot of them. Then I'll take the ink that's on my gloves and just kind of work that into the flower. I don't need these to be solid black, but I want them to have more black than not. See that? All right, then I'm going to clean my hand just by doing it like that. Okay, back we go. Now we're going to take a little oxide. This is going to be some weathered wood. This is going to give it some kind of like some gray. See that little gray in there? Kind of stone. Then we're going to take some cracked pistachio. Ooh, now we're getting in there. Okay, look at that. So I don't do all of them the same color, but that's why I like them in a bunch, because I think when it dries, that's what's going to give you that creepy, cool look. So it allows me to kind of move it around. Then I'll take some mica stain. Again, you don't have to use all these. Use whatever ingredients you have. But this is where I'm going in and kind of editing, meaning if I see like a white opening, see like right there, I'll just hit that with a little bit of spritz. This is also going to give me a little bit of shine because Phantom Mist is a mica stain. So it's going to give me that kind of grayish color, but also that. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of spritz on the top. But now that I did that Phantom Mist, I think, well, I don't have enough green, so I'll just hit that with a little bit more green. Not all of them. And there we go. So this little hot mess is going to dry beautifully. So you have options. You can let them air dry, which, well, that's what I normally would do. But I just want to dry these just for the sake of showing you, because you can always go back and add, okay? You can always go back and say, oh, you know what? I want to add more green, or I want to add more this. That's fine. But dry it first, because that's where the oxide will actually oxidize. And if you want it to even be more chalky, mist it again with some water, because water oxidizes the oxide. See how much brighter that just got with a little bit of water? Cool. All right, I think I want a little bit more pistachio right there. I'm going to try now without the glove, and we'll dry it. Ooh, that gave it a cool effect, see? So like I said, I would let these air dry. They would air dry in probably about 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't take very long, but they are heat stable because they are just paper. So, all right. So these are beautiful flowers. Now, if you wanted some purples in there, well, get out your purples. You can take a little bit of, I mean, that's what I said, like, there's no limit to how you want to color these. And I'll take a little bit of that, and then I'll take a little bit of Seedless Preserves Spritz, because that's where I did some shaded lilac. And let's try it, see what we get. Some purple vibes over there. See, they're kind of, see that lilac? Oh, you don't see it until it dries. Magic. Okay. So there's our flowers. So we've got some purples in there, some greens, They're just nice and cool and creepy. And then you can just kind of like build your bunch. See, these are like more purpley and blue than more green. So that's just adding more cracked pistachio or old paper. I probably added a little old paper in there. But I love just those creepy, dead flowers. You can use it with Ideology Conservatory. I'll even show you that. The thing to remember of why this worked, okay, because I think sometimes when I'm adding a bunch of sprays to stuff, you're like, how is all that working? We started with black spray stain, so that's going to be like our dye. But everything else that I put over this was not a dye. It was a pigment. And remember what I said well, I don't know when I said it, but I said it during this part of the hoopla. Pigment dominates dye. So Oxide, pigment. It has a dye in it, but it's dye and pigment. So like when I sprayed it, the dye of the shaded lilac didn't show up, but the pigment did. Spritz, pigment. Mica stain, well, dye and pigment. So when I was using it to fill in the blanks, I was relying on the ink to soak in and color it, but then the mica, the pigment, was adding the shine. So that's really why things work. Understanding what the products are and their values, like what's a dye, what's a pigment, when should I use one or the other, that really just comes with playing. The more you play, the more you do, the more you'll become absolutely comfortable with everything that you have. But if you don't, if you just, like to collect it, that's fine. But that's what videos are for. The whole thing about doing these videos, be that the hoopla or doing other lives, it's so you have a creative library to go back and say, what in the world did he talk about when and there? It's going to be in the videos or on the blog. I think going to timholtz.com is the easiest first, because it will just kind of give you an idea of what to do. So keep this in mind. I'm going to wrap this up, but I want you to kind of keep in mind that when you have things, when you have any of your products, the best piece of advice is creative play. Get your stuff out and play. Use it. Doesn't mean you have to make a card yet, but now we have stuff to make a card. It could be many cards. It could be many different things. Maybe it's going to be die cutting. You don't need a coordinating folder. See if you have anything the same. If you don't like a background, try stamping over it first before you sacrifice it, or cut things up, because you're going to get a different perspective now of the orientation of things. Play around with paste and your embossing powders and just see some different cool effects that you can get with your elements. And also go in and use the stuff that you have. Now, I don't normally show this side of things, but I think fair is fair, just to show you like how I like to work. I like to work I call it creative chaos. Creative chaos meaning I like to be organized, but I like to be inspired. So I show this side of things because I am just like you. I collect things, and this is my favorite tin of all. This is just the storage tin. You saw that it had the embossing glazes in it, but this is what I do with my Ideology seasonal. I have a lot of other stuff that I sort, like I have my brads in its own container or little frames. But when it comes to seasonal stuff, I have the same set for Christmas. I have a metal tin, I have a resin tin, and I have a rando tin, random stuff. Why? Because when I want Halloween stuff, I forget what I have. I do. But if I have all my stuff, when I'm now looking through things, I show you the muffin tin because I do use the muffin tin. So I don't want you to think like, oh gosh, that's so gimmicky. I use the muffin tin if I want to set up stuff and I'm looking for little embellishments, maybe to do like a vignette box or whatever. But when I'm in making mode, this is, so thanks, Mario. So like, I have this out on my table just to remind me of stuff that I have, but this is like the real deal when I'm working, because it's big enough. I love that it has a latch. That's really important, but I can just look through stuff, and there's old stuff. There's like crypt cameos. That's old Ideology. The bird cage, that's Ideology. A lot of word bands, word plaques, that owl, but it allows me to just kind of go in and find things that I want to use, because sometimes I might say, oh, you know what, I want to find a skull, but as I'm going through, I might have other little options. Okay, when it comes to like resin, if I made something out of it, well, it's still going to go in there because, I made that with this was inspired by Tammy B using a salvage rabbit and making like a little pet cemetery crypt out of it with crypt paste and the urn. I showed this in the Ideology one. I threw it in the tin. This is just a glass dome in the new urn with some of the new little skulls in there. But then it's kind of like a pre-made embellishment, or this was an idea that was like half cooked. And I was like, no, because maybe I needed to paint it or whatever. But my point is, out of sight, out of mind. So if you have stuff like for the flowers, this is a great conservatory. This is all new ideology stuff. We've got the columns, some different urns. You can pair that with, you know, some creepy little flowers and maybe put like a skull or stuff on the top. I mean, my gosh, before you know it, you've got a vignette or you've got a dome or you've got something, because all your ideas were here to dig through. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because I want you to know, like, sometimes in a live, it just seems like, oh, you know, he's got it all put together. This is prepping to actually condense my brain, to compartmentally say, okay, here's what I do. But really, like confections, this would freak people out. And I'm an OCD guy, but like candy, I just want to, well, besides I want to dive into this and swim around, I want to be able to just pick up stuff and go, oh, this Jack, or oh, this cat, or oh, hey, Zoe Hillman sent me a whole stash of these from Denmark because I couldn't get any more. I love, this is the original Jack. But it just allows you to be inspiring. It doesn't have to be these tins. My point is, if you're a collector and you have stuff, if it's still in the packaging, get it out. That's step one. Step two, find something that you can take and put on your table and work through that can easily just close back up, but you can see what it is. And that's what I like about the windowed tin. I think that's really important, because organizing everything in little drawers and bags, it might feel good for the soul when you first get it, but you won't use it. I'm telling you. And you're like, oh, you don't know me. No, I don't know you, but I'm just guessing that you probably still have all that stuff in the same little drawer and pouch that you put it in. I was that way. Remember, I was back in the Cropper Hopper days when they had like tackle boxes with little drawers and you had everything in a compartment. But when you're able to dig through it, I'm telling you, it inspires your thinking in a completely different way. So those are some ideas kind of to kickstart. Woo, that was a lot, huh?